Chapter 1801. Gong Jia then sought his sister's opinion. Sis, can I? I want to hold your arm as we enter the venue. Of course. Yun Yeqing agreed. Great. Great. Since you're her brother, it's Shishir's wish for you to hold Shishir's arm as she enters the venue on such a special day. Of course, I'm happy for you. Thank you, uncle. Gong Jia smiled as happily as a child. He suddenly thought of something and took out his walkie-talkie to give an order. Withdraw the helicopter and don't disturb the order of the venue. Everyone, stay on the ship and listen to my orders. Don't move without my permission. Roger, sir. Gong Jia put away the walkie-talkie and gently held Yun Shishir's soft hand. He smiled at her. Sis. Let's go. Okay. Gong Jia then led her slowly down the red carpet. Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shen then hurriedly immersed themselves in the ceremony. When Gong Jia and Yun Shishir appeared at the end of the red carpet, the sacred music played again. All the guests in their seats stood up in unison and looked in their direction. They were either looking at the bride-to-be with anticipation or blessing. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen followed behind obediently. The two little guys walked up to Yun Shishir and silently lifted the hem of her gown that was spread out on the floor. A group of cute little flower girls standing in 2 rows walked up with flower baskets in their hands. The flower baskets were filled with fresh and tender rose petals. They wore pink gauze dresses and had small and cute angel wings on their backs. They were as cute as angels, just like the incarnation of Cupid, the god of love. The flower girls walked on both sides. Before the engagement ceremony, these cute little Lolas had undergone some training. Hence, when Yun Shishir and Gong Jia appeared on the red carpet, they grabbed the petals in their baskets and sprinkled them over Yun Shishir's head. Some of the flower girls were especially pretty and adorable. They had blonde hair, blue eyes, deep-set brows, and exquisite European features. Some of the flower girls were the guests' children. They had black hair and amber eyes, but after dressing up, they were extremely beautiful. However, gradually, these flower girls saw Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen behind Yun Shishir. They curiously surrounded them and asked in their childish voices, "What's your name?" Yu Yu pouted and ignored them. She proudly turned her face to the side. Those little flower girls, however, persevered and went to the other side. While scattering petals, they smiled and said, "Can we be friends?" Yu Yu proudly ignored them. Xiao Yichen, however, liked to play with girls. Hence, he said, "His name is Yu Yu." Yu Yu glared at him. "Why did you betray me? Idiot Yu Yu, how can you bear to reject such a cute girl?" Xiao Yichen lectured in all seriousness. "Mommy said that you have to be gentle with girls." Yu Yu was speechless. When the guests saw these adorable children interacting so innocently and heard Xiao Yichen sternly say, "You have to be gentle with girls," they were amused. These little guys are so adorable. That's right. These 2 children are so handsome. Look at them. They're wearing suits and look as elegant as gentlemen. Chapter 1802. When Yun Shishir appeared in front of all the guests in her splendid attire, they were deeply impressed by her beauty. Gosh! She's too beautiful. Many of the guests had many hazy fantasies about the bride on their way here. Now that they saw it with their own eyes, they were deeply moved. Perhaps, strictly speaking, Yun Shishir was not the most beautiful bride they had ever seen, but she was the most elegant woman. Some people were beautiful, but this beauty was empty and soulless, like a porcelain doll that had a surface but no soul. Yun Shishir's beauty, however, was not limited to the surface. It was a beauty that bloomed from the inside out. Her luxurious gown was like a blooming rose. The ingenious design, not to mention the priceless jewelry on her body, accentuated her otherworldly beauty. Because of her presence, the entire venue became dreamy and illusory, like a fairyland. Her beauty made everyone gasp in admiration. Someone noticed the bouquet on Yun Shishir's hand. Even from afar, one could see the dazzling blood diamond. Do you see the diamond on the bride-to-be's hand? It's so beautiful. It's as red as blood. It's so mesmerizing. That's a blood diamond. It's very rare. Even a carat of it is very expensive. It's basically something that can only be found by chance. This small one is priceless. Blood diamonds are the noblest among diamonds. Also, this diamond doesn't look small. It's about 3 carats. The craftsmanship of the carving is uncanny. It looks like the raw stone should be even bigger. What extravagance! Someone with sharp eyes was able to estimate the weight of the diamond at a glance. Yun Xingmiao and Yun Qinli were also stunned by Yun Shishir's expensive outfit. At first, they snorted disdainfully when they saw Yun Shishir's gown. They thought to themselves, marrying into a rich family is indeed different. Not to mention his outfit, just the accessories on his body alone would be enough to blind them. His heart was filled with envy and jealousy. However, it was out of his reach. However, when they noticed the bouquet on Yun Shishir's wrist, their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They did not know how precious a blood diamond was. In comparison, this dazzling diamond was dazzling and mesmerizing. Which girl did not like diamonds? There was no way they could resist diamonds. Who could be as lucky as Yun Shishir to be doted on by everyone? Therefore, most people could only look at her in envy. When Yun Xingmiao saw the man holding Yun Shishir's arm, her eyes widened in shock and amazement. Qinli, look at the man beside Shishir, he's so handsome. He's better looking than many celebrities on TV. I don't think so. I think brother-in-law is more handsome than him. Although Yun Qinli said this, she still looked at him with admiration. But brother Mu is already taken. You'd better stop thinking about it. This man looks quite similar to Shishir. Xiangyu suddenly said from the side. Yun Xingmiao was surprised. She did a close comparison and found that the man looked very similar to Yun Shishir. She had never heard of such a person before, though. Chapter 1803. Yun Xingmiao chimed in. Judging from his attire, he should be a wealthy and respectable figure. Perhaps, he's also a big shot with a powerful background. Yun Qinli was a little jealous, so much so that the way she looked at Yun Shishir changed. Indeed, one could not compare with another. She envied Yun Shishir's good fortune. Initially, she was jealous that she had the opportunity to go to university, had a high academic qualification, and was born in the city. She was like a rich young lady who lived a life of luxury and did not have to worry about food and clothing. Later, when she met Yun Shishir's fiancé, she muttered to herself how she had met such a good man. He had an extraordinary background, a respectable family background, and a handsome face. She could not figure it out. How could she have met so many lucky people? In Yun Qinli's heart, Yun Shishir was like a princess who had been spoiled by the heavens. With so much love on her, she did not have to worry about living an ignoble life. Now, however, it was only at the engagement ceremony that she was truly defeated. Yun Qinli could no longer suppress the sense of defeat in her heart. Feeling unbalanced, she bit her lip and kept looking at the backs of Yun Shishir and Gong Jie. Under everyone's gaze, Gong Jie held Yun Shishir's arm as they walked to the flower arch. Then, they stopped in their tracks and stood there with a smile. Lu Jinyu walked over in a formal suit. He was in charge of this engagement banquet. As the MC of Mu Yaja's engagement banquet, he naturally felt honored. Therefore, he had gone through the script several times until Mu Yaja was satisfied with it. In many weddings, the opening speech was very emotional, but if it was too emotional, it would inevitably appear a little pretentious. With the microphone in hand, Lu Jinyu's concise and humorous opening speech pushed the atmosphere in the venue to a climax, driving the guests' emotions to a high. As a key figure in Xingyu Financial Corporation's board meetings, Lu Jinyu naturally did not have stage fright or shyness, but he could not help but feel a little nervous before going on stage. After all, it was different from the past. Today, he was going to make an opening speech. It was Big Boss's engagement party. He would be lying if he said that he wasn't nervous. If he messed up, his boss would definitely not let him off. Not only would his bonus be deducted, but he would also have to pay for his marriage. Therefore, he attached great importance to it. But when he went up on stage, he quickly blended into the happy and warm atmosphere. With excitement in his heart, he gradually unfolded the lines that he had memorized overnight. Yun Shishir held on to Gong Jia's arm. From the beginning to the end, her smile was gentle. Her gentleness was infectious and made people feel exceptionally warm. The atmosphere at the scene gradually increased. Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Next, I would like to invite all distinguished guests to witness this most sacred moment together. Let's welcome our groom-to-be." Ceremonial music sounded. Under Yun Shishir's smiling gaze, Wuxia slowly walked towards her with flowers in his hands, welcomed by a group of little flower girls. At this moment, Yun Shishir suddenly became uncontrollably nervous. So much so that Gong Jia, who was standing beside her, could feel her extremely stiff hands. "Shao Jia. What should I do? I'm a little nervous," she said secretly, but her face was red and she had some difficulty breathing. Gong Jia did not know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Why are you nervous? Are you afraid that the groom-to-be will run away at the last minute?" Chapter 1804. All right. Be good. Don't be nervous, he said gently as he patted the back of her hand to comfort her. It was like a form of encouragement, as though he was telling her not to be nervous because he was here. Yun Shishir looked up and exchanged glances with him. She took a deep breath, and only then did she feel less nervous. In the blink of an eye, Wuxia was already in front of her. All the guests stood up and applauded. His group of brothers stood at the side excitedly and whistled. They were obviously very excited. Wuxia turned slightly and put a finger to his lips, indicating for everyone to keep quiet. Everyone quietened down in an instant. He turned around and looked at her. His gaze was deep and gentle as he said, "Do you know? I've been waiting for you for 28 years for this moment." Yun Shishir was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. Gong Jia looked at him silently, but his lips curved slightly and he did not say anything. Wuxia's thin lips curved into a charming smile, but he asked gently, "Do you believe in love at first sight?" Yun Shishir pursed her lips and nodded. Her eyes were a little hot. "I believe in it." She had always believed that love at first sight was a fated encounter. "At first, I didn't believe in it," Wuxia continued, "but when I met you, I felt that you belonged to me. Luckily, it wasn't too late to meet you." "I wasn't late." Yun Shishir was so shocked that she almost suffocated. He rarely said words of love, but today, in front of everyone, he actually said such words of love that made one's heart skip a beat. Yun Shishir's face turned red, but her eyes were slightly moist because of it. Wuxia said slowly, "Thank you for making me believe in fate." As soon as he said that, he handed her the bouquet in his hand. Yun Shishir held the bouquet shyly. The next second, Wuxia hugged her shoulders affectionately and kissed her delicate red lips tenderly. The guests below the stage were also touched and clapped their hands. Some were so touched that their eyes were wet. The most beautiful love might not be met in the most beautiful years, but it was the company of holding hands for the longest time. It was the most beautiful thing to have until the end. At this moment, Gong Jia quietly let go of his hand and stepped down from the stage. He stood by the side and quietly watched the tender scene on the stage, his gaze gradually deepened. At this moment, he put aside all the feuds and resentment, and offered his most sincere blessings for the person he loved deep in his heart. "Sister, will be happy." As long as she could be happy, he would not regret his decision no matter what. After a short moment of tenderness, Lu Jinyu walked up to the stage and said mysteriously to the guests, "Let's invite our honorable little guest to perform a special performance for everyone." Shao Yichen walked up to the stage and then walked to the center of the stage. He stood between Wuxia and Yun Shishir and suddenly took out a small magic wand. "Next, I'm going to perform a magic trick for everyone." "What magic trick?" Lu Jinyu pretended to be mysterious. Shao Yichen, however, learned from Yu's arrogance and snorted coldly. "You'll know when I perform it." The guests roared with laughter. They all thought that this little guy, who was as serious as a little adult, was really too adorable. He was pretending to be mysterious. Chapter 1805. The little guy suddenly waved his hands in the air to the music in the hall. He closed his eyes and looked very stylish. He was imitating the world's top magician, as if he was going to perform a mysterious magic trick. However, after waving his hands for a long time, nothing happened. Wuxia had no idea that there would be such a trick during the ceremony. He looked confused. Xianxia's eyes widened in curiosity as she waited to see what the little lad was up to. Yu, who was standing at the side, fell silent. What kind of clown was this guy trying to pull on stage? Lu Jinyu urged, "Did you conjure anything?" Seeing that nothing happened, Xiao Yichen got a little anxious. His face flushed red as he said, "Don't be anxious. I'm still brewing." As soon as he said that, the guests below the stage burst into laughter again. They were amused by the child's cuteness and playfulness. "This child is so adorable." Yu raised his eyebrows. Playfulness? In his opinion, Wuxian was a clown. What kind of trick was he up to? Wuxian waved it around for a long time, but there was still no movement from it. The guests below the stage burst into laughter again. Wuxian suddenly felt uneasy and asked Lu Jinyu for help. "Uncle Jinyu, what's going on? This isn't how the script was written." However, his voice wasn't soft, and everyone below the stage heard him clearly. This time, he was exposed. Xianxia snorted and burst into laughter. Wuxia and Yu held their foreheads in tacit understanding, clearly feeling helpless. However, Lu Jinyu said in all seriousness, "Have you forgotten the magic trick that I taught you yesterday?" "That's right. This is the trick. Little fool, Uncle Jinyu will teach you again." As he spoke, Lu Jinyu squatted down and held his little hands. He slowly gestured in the air. Within a few seconds, a flock of snow-white pigeons suddenly flew over from not far away. They circled the ceiling of the venue before flapping their wings and flying away. Xiao Yichen's eyes lit up. This sudden and magical scene surprised all the guests present. However, what was even more surprising was that there was actually a nimble pigeon flying straight towards Wuxian. The little fellow immediately stretched out his hand, and the pigeon nimbly landed on his finger, standing steadily on his hand. Everyone looked over and saw that there was a rose in the pigeon's mouth. Under the rose's flower path, there were two exquisite and small boxes. Wuxian smiled and wanted to take the box from its little mouth. Unexpectedly, the pigeon had a little temper and turned its head away, refusing to give it to him. Wuxian panicked and reached out to grab it. Goo! He was pecked by the proud pigeon. Wah! Wuxian looked angry. This pigeon must have been transformed by Yu. Yu had been implicated even when he was lying down. Wuxian tried to take it again, but the pigeon pecked his little pink hand again. Wuxian looked aggrieved and pursed his lips unhappily. Even a pigeon is bullying me? Everyone was amused by the clown's antics. Even Xianxia couldn't be bothered to be reserved. She immediately broke into laughter. "Little fool," Yu muttered. She ran onto the stage and flicked Wuxian's little head. "How stupid. You can't even handle a little pigeon." Xiao Yichen felt even more aggrieved. Chapter 1806. Everyone was amused by the clown's antics. Even Xianxia could not be bothered to maintain her composure as she snickered to herself. "Little fool," Yu muttered as he ran to the stage and flicked Wuxian's head. "You're so stupid. You can't even handle a pigeon." Xiao Yichen felt even more aggrieved as he looked at him. He was so upset that he was about to cry. "Stupid Yu, why don't you do it if you can?" Yu snorted arrogantly, but he still reached out and gently patted the pigeon's head. His gentle touch quickly won the pigeon's trust. Yu smoothly took the box. Then, he turned around and handed the two boxes containing the rings to Wuxia. Wuxian was dumbfounded, unable to believe what he had just seen. Yu seemed to have telepathy with the pigeon. "That's not fair." It turned out that this was the sacred moment of exchanging rings, and they had purposely used the most innocent and unique way to present it to the public. Yun Xingmiao and Yun Qinli stood on their tiptoes to look at the stage, curious as to what was in the boxes. From the looks of it, they were probably exchanging engagement rings. Yu Yu beamed. Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen wish Daddy and Mommy a blissful marriage for 100 years. We hope that Daddy and Mommy will always love each other and grow old together. This is the gift we prepared for Daddy and Mommy on this important day. His sweet words instantly made the guests below the stage laugh. Some of the guests knew about Mu Yichen, but they knew very little about Yu Yu. However, when they saw that Yu Yu and Mu Yichen looked alike, they knew that this child was probably Mu Yichen's younger brother. It was probably because Mu Yaja was eager to protect his son that he did not expose him to the public too early. Yu Yu had said that this was a secret gift for her parents, but it was not just for show. This pair of engagement rings were personally chosen by Yu Yu and Mu Yichen. Of course, this pair of diamond rings was not cheap. However, this was a small token of appreciation from Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen. Yun Shishir did not know about this. However, Mu Yaja knew about it. Before the engagement ceremony, Yu had secretly found him and told him about it. It turned out that the two little guys wanted to use their private savings to personally choose a pair of engagement rings for them as a token of their sincerity. However, he couldn't let Yun Shishir know about it. Mu Yaja, on the other hand, laughed. These two were so smart that they even knew to specially choose a gift for the engagement. However, he knew very well that although the two little guys were only 7 years old, they were millionaires and had a lot of private savings. He had a rough idea of Xiao Yichen's private savings. As for Yu Yu, as a core member of Hurricane Group, it was natural that he had a lot of money in his hands. That was a very impressive amount of money. Even Mu Yaja did not have a direct understanding of his son's wealth. He only knew that Hurricane Group's financial strength was not inferior to Mu Corporation's. In fact, it might even be stronger than Mu Corporation's. Chapter 1807. When Xiao Yichen found out about this, he wanted to join in as well. He also took out his secret stash of money and said that he wanted to choose together with Yu Yu. Hence, the two little rascals started to choose early on. Mu Yaja was a little surprised. Then, he asked curiously about the design that the two little rascals had chosen. However, at this moment, the two little rascals acted mysteriously and said that they would give him a surprise on the day of the engagement ceremony. Mu Yaja took the box from him. The moment he opened the box, a dazzling light stole everyone's attention. Following the dazzling light, a pigeon's egg embedded with a pink diamond appeared in everyone's line of sight. It was a pair of engagement rings. On the female ring, there was a rose gold ring holder with a 2-carat pink diamond embedded in it. The unique design and exquisite craftsmanship made it look like a work of the gods. There were a total of 121 exquisite facets. The entire ring was so dazzling that one could feel its unique radiance even from a distance away. It was not to say that the bigger the diamond on the ring, the better it was. On this point, one could not help but praise Yu Yu's taste. Although the diamond was only 2 carats, its purity, color, and craftsmanship were all top-notch. On the other hand, Mu Yaja's engagement ring was similarly luxurious but reserved. There were no unnecessary decorations or embellishments. It was also a rose gold ring, but the design was extremely novel. The diamond on the male ring was embedded on the reverse side. In the inner part of the ring holder, there was a 20-carat diamond. There was a special saying about this. It meant that the love for her was in the heart and wholeheartedly. Generally speaking, engagement rings were only prepared for the female party. However, Yu Yu felt that since it was an engagement, both her daddy and mommy had to choose a ring. Hence, she chose a ring for Mu Yaja. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows and suddenly smiled. It was obvious that the two little fellows must have spent a lot of effort to choose such a special gift. He smiled at Yu Yu and Mu Yichen to express his gratitude. Then, with everyone watching, he lifted Yun Shishir's hand and slowly put the beautiful ring on her ring finger. At this point, it was like a silent and solemn declaration of his sovereignty. From now on, this woman would be his rightful fiancée. Under everyone's witness. Xianxia gently raised her hand. On her slender finger, there was a ring that was so beautiful that it could not be any more dazzling. She smiled and lifted Wuxia's hand. She took out the diamond ring and slowly put it on his ring finger. From this moment onwards, he was officially her fiancé. When Xianxia thought of this, countless complicated feelings welled up in her heart. In the end, there was only sweetness and gratitude. Kiss me. Kiss me. Kiss. Kiss. The guests below the stage were infected by the sweet and warm atmosphere. They could not help but encourage and cheer loudly. Chapter 1808. Wuxia, on the other hand, generously hugged her waist and, under everyone's blessings, gently planted a passionate kiss on her delicate red lips. On the stage, as the two of them hugged and kissed, the applause below the stage also erupted without holding back. It was just a light kiss, but he knew when to stop. With that, the engagement ceremony was completed. Yu and Xiao Yichen walked down the stage. Mu Yichen looked back 3 times as he walked. Seeing his daddy and mommy blissful moment, he was so happy that he wanted to fly into the sky. However, as he was distracted, he bumped into someone with a plop. Mu Yichen lost his balance and was about to fall backward. However, the man reached out his hand and firmly supported him as he was about to kiss the ground. Thank you. Huh. Mu Yichen was about to turn back to express his gratitude when he looked up and saw Gong Jia, who was wearing a snow-white trench coat, looking down at him expressionlessly. Yu stood beside him and looked at him with disdain. What an idiot. How could you bump into someone when you're walking? I was just looking at daddy and mommy. All of a sudden, Gong Jia bent down on one knee with great interest and looked at him at eye level. His lips curled up slightly as a rare look of calmness appeared on his face. He was very tall, as tall as Wuxia. On top of that, he had the natural aura of a king. When he knelt down, it felt as though he was condescending. What's your name? Mu Yichen heard this and smiled confidently. He had inherited Wuxia's arrogant demeanor and was natural and unrestrained. My name is Mu Yichen. Do you know who I am? Gong Jia teased him. Mu Yichen tilted his head and smiled. I know. Oh. You're mommy's younger brother, so I have to call you uncle. With that, Mu Yichen placed his hands behind his back and called out obediently, Uncle. Gong Jia was amused by him. Good boy. Mu Yichen said, but I called you uncle. Shouldn't you give me a big red packet? Gong Jia was stunned. He turned his head and exchanged glances with Yu. He furrowed his brows curiously. Is there such a thing? Yu fell silent and then said, yes. Uncle, when in Rome, do as the Romans do and give him a big red packet. Gong Jia, after that, Wuxia and Xianxia walked off the stage and began to receive the guests' blessings. Soon, the gift that Jianghu had prepared was presented before everyone's eyes. It was a 9-tiered cake with 2 exquisite dolls made according to Xianxia and Wuxia's likeness. The entire cake was exquisitely made, with beautiful decorations and rich colors. One look at it and one couldn't help but drool. It was said that this cake was made by a famous chef and was flown over. Jianghu asked eagerly, Sister-in-law, do you like the gift I prepared? Xianxia smiled and nodded. I like it. Jianghu was instantly elated and his face glowed. Xianxia suddenly said softly, but it's not as thoughtful as Jinyu's. Jianghu, Lu Jinyu, who was standing at the side, was instantly satisfied. Jianghu was in tears. Sister-in-law. I'll give you a big red packet later too. Chapter 1809. Lu Jinyu patted him on the shoulder. See? Red packets may be tacky, but sister-in-law likes them. The rest of the group immediately agreed to prepare a big red packet, which tickled Xianxia to no end. The dishes were served one after another at the gala. The guests were holding plates in their hands as they chatted and toasted in front of the buffet table. Yun Xingmiao and Yun Qinli kept looking around in the crowd and finally spotted Gong Jie's back at a table. They exchanged glances, and Yun Qinli urged, "Sis, go and find out his name." "Why do you want me to find out?" "Because you're dressed up prettily today. Men naturally can't refuse a beautiful woman." Yun Qinli's words were clear and logical. Yun Xingmiao, on the other hand, was secretly delighted. She subconsciously tidied her hair and looked at herself in the mirror before finally walking toward Gong Jie. Gong Jie held his plate and looked at the dazzling array of dishes, but his gaze eventually landed on the dessert section. Like Yun Shishir, he had a sweet taste and especially loved desserts. Therefore, desserts were irresistible to him. Gong Jie had just reached out his hand when a woman's hand suddenly reached out from his right and touched it. His sensitivity jolted and he quickly retracted his hand, frowning in displeasure. He had an extremely serious mysophobia and usually did not allow anyone to touch him. Even if he did, he would wear gloves in advance. He did not like anyone to touch him, except for the people close to him. Thus, while feeling displeased, Gong Jie could not help but look to his side. He saw Yun Xingmiao standing at the side with a red face and looking at him awkwardly. She appeared to be at a loss and looked apologetic. "Sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." Gong Jie's face was cold as he scrutinized her from head to toe. His frosty gaze made Yun Xingmiao look even more innocent. I just wanted to try this dessert too." She forced a smile and gave a seemingly reasonable explanation. Unfortunately, unlike other men, Gong Jie's eyes were sharp enough to tell at a glance that this woman was deliberately trying to get close to him, which was why she had played such a small trick. Alas, this method of hitting on him was too boring. He had seen enough. Gong Jie had no lack of women around him. With his handsome appearance and domineering aura, as one of the heirs of the Gong family, his power was shocking. The women around him were like a river, flocking to him like a flock of ducks. There were even some who used unscrupulous means to get close to him and attract him. However, he was used to ignoring women. Unless there was a biological need, women were dispensable to him. He didn't need love. Therefore, he would definitely keep a distance from women unless he had a great need for them. Yun Xingmiao felt embarrassed as she looked at his cold face. This man seemed to be very difficult to approach. He looked noble and arrogant. His face was indifferent, and his eyes were especially cold and sharp like icicles that could pierce one's skin. Gong Jie turned around expressionlessly. Clearly, he had no intention of paying attention to her. Yun Xingmiao was naturally indignant about being splashed with cold water in front of everyone. Thus, she bit her lip, stepped forward, and gently tugged at his sleeve. Chapter 18:10. Gong Jie turned around, raised his hand, and splashed the red wine all over her face. Voila! Yun Xingmiao came back to her senses with the sudden noise, only to realize what the man had done to her. He had splashed red wine all over her face. Drops of red wine slid down her cheeks and eventually drenched her hair and dress. She looked extremely disheveled under everyone's watchful eyes. Gong Jie's cold gaze fell on her. His deep voice was as cold as ice, and his face was expressionless. "Don't touch me with your filthy hands, okay?" Yun Xingmiao opened her mouth to speak, but when she looked at his cold face, she felt a wave of sadness and even more humiliated. I don't mean anything else. It's just that," Gong Jie impatiently interrupted her explanation. "I don't mean anything else. I just find you annoying, so stay away from me." She was so embarrassed that she froze on the spot. Her feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, and she could not take a step forward. The guests looked in her direction, and for a moment, she was standing in the middle of the discussion. Yun Shishir heard the strange commotion and rushed over with her dress in hand. However, she was stunned when she saw the scene. "Shao Jia, what's going on?" Gong Jie saw her, and the coldness on his face was immediately replaced by a gentle expression. "Sis." "Shao Jia, what's wrong with her?" Yun Shishir glanced at Yun Xingmiao, who was surrounded by the crowd, and then at the mess she was in. She could not understand what had happened. It's nothing. It's just that she touched me with her filthy hands just now. It's really annoying. Gong Jia's voice turned cold as he said, if it weren't for Sis's important day today, she can forget about keeping that hand of hers. His voice was not loud, but it reached Yun Qingmiao's ears clearly. She could not help but shudder at such a cold and frightening statement. It was so cold that it penetrated her heart. These words were not false at all. In the past, at a private party, a woman had tampered with his wine glass in order to get Gong Jia. When the Gong Jia found out, one of her hands was crippled on the spot. Perhaps, on the surface, this man was so docile and well-behaved. This tenderness was only limited to Yun Shishir. Other than her, the Gong Jia treated women rather coldly. This was something Yun Qingmiao had learned firsthand. For a moment, she was embarrassed and aggrieved. She covered her face awkwardly, lifted her messy dress, and hurriedly left. Yun Shishir furrowed her brows, not knowing what to say. Gong Jia saw her eyebrows tightly knitted, suddenly a little nervous. Sister, are you angry with me? How could this be? You don't look well. I'm not angry. Yun Shishir smiled helplessly. But Shao Jia, there are some people that you don't have to care about. Gong Jia said guiltily, I'm sorry. I'll restrain myself next time. Yun Shishir smiled. All right, good boy. She gently stroked Gong Jia's head, her eyes full of indulgence. Yun Qingmiao returned to her room, and Yun Qinli arrived shortly after, only to see her sister huddled in a corner and crying silently. Sis, are you crying? Chapter 1811. Breaking down, Yun Qingmiao interrupted her and questioned, You're not the one who embarrassed yourself in front of so many guests. Why are you making sarcastic remarks here? Yun Qinli was speechless. Yun Qingmiao was crying so hard that her eyes were red and swollen. The thought of being splashed with wine and humiliated in front of so many people just now filled her with resentment and nowhere to vent. Hence, she did not hold back in her tone toward her older sister. Yun Qinli, however, snapped, I'm not the one who splashed red wine on your face. Do you have to be so angry at me? Yun Qingmiao snorted but did not say anything. She just kept sobbing, clearly feeling aggrieved. Yun Qinli walked to her side, squatted down, and suddenly whispered, I heard that man call Yun Shishir sister earlier. Could they be long-lost siblings? Sister? Yun Qingmiao looked up with reddened eyes in suspicion. He should be Yun Shishir's younger brother. Judging from their appearances, the two of them do look very similar. Why? 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 Yun Qingmiao broke down and wailed. Why does Yun Shishir have so much? She has such a handsome fiancé who is so powerful that he even booked an entire island for her engagement party. Not only that, do you see the accessories she's wearing? Do you see that pair of engagement rings? Do you see that priceless gown she's wearing? Why? Why does she deserve to be doted on like a princess? Yun Qinli frowned and suddenly said, I asked around earlier. This private island isn't booked. Then, what is it? This is one of the private properties under Shishir's fiancé's name. In other words, this island has long been under his name. Yun Qingmiao's eyes widened and she was speechless. Sister, have you heard of Dishing Financial Group? Yun Qingmiao shook her head, baffled by the situation. Never heard of it. What happened? I did some research. If I'm not wrong, Shishir's fiancé is the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. Yun Qinli's eyes were filled with jealousy and envy. So what? Yun Qingmiao, on the other hand, knew very little about Dishing Financial Group, so she did not take her words to heart when she heard them. Yun Qinli raised her eyebrows and looked at her in disbelief. So what? Sister, do you know the status of Dishing Financial Group in the country? Do you know how much Shishir's fiancé is worth? Do you know what it means to be the president of Dishing Financial Group? If Shishir's fiancé is the rumored mysterious young master of Dishing Financial Group, then it can be said that if Shishir marries this man, she will undoubtedly become a phoenix and enjoy a lifetime of glory. Is it that exaggerated? Haha. Don't you know how many real estate companies Dishing Financial Group owns? Whether it's finance, real estate, entertainment, vacations, star-rated hotel chains, medical care. Dishing's Polar Light Group has a lot of investments in every field. It can be said that with this identity alone, Yun Shishir's life, she'll really become a phoenix. As Yun Qinli spoke, her eyes were filled with undisguised jealousy and hatred. Chapter 18:12. After marrying him, she would not have to worry about her life's glory and wealth. Among the guests earlier, even the royals and political leaders of other countries, as well as the honorable president, were present. It went without saying how outstanding Mu Yaja's status was. Yun Qinli was extremely envious. However, she could only look on helplessly. In her heart, however, she started to hate Yun Shishir for being such a jinx. In her opinion, a woman with such a background like Yun Shishir was nothing more than a typical Cinderella. Apart from her pretty face, what else did she have? How could she be worthy of Mu Yaja, who was of such a high status? To her, someone like Yun Shishir, who could marry a rich young master with a net worth of tens of millions, was already very enviable. Now, especially after experiencing such a grand and romantic engagement ceremony, her jealousy toward Yun Shishir had seeped into her bones. What right did she have? What right did Yun Shishir have to marry such an outstanding man when she had nothing? How many people were envious of her for marrying into a rich family? What about her? Comparing oneself to others was truly infuriating. Yun Qingmiao was also feeling conflicted. After witnessing the materialistic nature of the big city, she yearned for a life of luxury. Her mood also became impetuous. She desperately wanted to integrate into the upper-class society and befriend an outstanding man like Mu Yaja. She did not have high expectations. As long as it was a man half as capable as Mu Yaja, she would go after him. Alas, she was met with a rebuff from the Gongjia. Yun Qingmiao felt unbalanced. What right did Yun Shishir have but not her? She did not know what tricks she had used to make a man like Mu Yaja fall head over heels for her. It seemed that she was quite capable. On the surface, she looked pure and untainted, as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Who knew how despicable she was in her bones? She's really the reincarnation of a vixen. I don't know what kind of despicable methods she used, but look at Mu Yaja, he's so obedient to her. Humph. Sis, let's work harder, too. Who knows, maybe we can find a man who's more outstanding than him. Yun Qinli encouraged. Yun Qingmiao narrowed her eyes. Although she sneered without saying a word, the ambition in her eyes could not be concealed. After the engagement ceremony ended, Yun Shishir and Mu Yaja sent off the guests. Not long after, another uninvited guest arrived. When Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin appeared at the venue, Yun Shishir was caught off guard and stood rooted to the ground. Mu Yaja was not too surprised, however. He knew that this man would eventually show up. With Mu Shumin's help, Mu Linfeng leaned on his cane and looked at the newlyweds with a dark expression. When he saw Mu Yaja hugging Yun Shishir's shoulder, he sized her up with a cold gaze and let out a bone-chilling sneer. The venue was completely sealed off today. Those who could not produce an invitation were not allowed to enter. When Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin arrived, they were stopped outside the venue because they could not produce an invitation. It was only when the guests had left that he was able to sneak in. Mu Linfeng did not know that Mu Yaja had prepared this engagement ceremony at first. He thought back to when Mu Yaja had said that even if he got married, he would not touch the Mu family's assets, but he did not believe it. Chapter 18:13. In the end, when he found out that Mu Yaja had meticulously prepared such a grand engagement party, he was shocked. He knew that it was because of this engagement banquet. Although it was not a high-profile event, many important guests were invited. The sound of the wind naturally fell into his ears. How could he believe it? Engagement party? This rascal did not use any funds from the Mu group. How did he have the ability to organize such a grand engagement party? He was full of doubts as he rushed to the venue with Mu Shumin. However, the scene before him made him turn pale with fright. Without using the Mu group's funds, the engagement party was actually so grand and dignified. At the same time, this surprised him and vaguely made him suspicious. When he wanted to enter the venue, he was stopped at the door. This infuriated Mu Linfeng greatly. Who was he? He was Mu Yaja's second uncle. Why did he need an invitation to attend his nephew's engagement party? How could this be? Mu Linfeng felt like he was going crazy. If it were not for the 2 holes in his nose, he would have been angered to death. He was filled with hatred. Mu Shumin was also rebuffed. She rushed all the way here but was stopped at the door. She had lost all her face. Hence, when she saw Mu Yaja and Yun Shishir smiling as they sent the guests off, she suppressed her anger with great difficulty and did not explode on the spot. When Mu Yaja saw them, he still gave them some face and called out coldly, "Second uncle." However, he ignored Mu Shumin as if she was invisible. Mu Shumin was so angry that she almost vomited blood. Just as she was about to flare up, Mu Linfeng held her down. Only then did she swallow her anger and calm down. "You still have the cheek to call me second uncle?" Most of the guests had left, so Mu Linfeng stood at the door and knocked his walking stick on the floor. He said angrily, "What do you mean by this? What are you trying to do by coming to this island without telling everyone in the Mu family? Are you trying to rebel? Or will you only stop when you anger me to death?" "Second uncle, you're exaggerating." Mu Yaja hugged Yun Shishir tightly, but his expression was indifferent. "Shishir and I should invite guests who sincerely wish us well for our engagement party. As for those who treat us coldly and have bad intentions, there is no need to invite them." Bad intentions. Mu Linfeng frowned deeply, but he was so angry that he laughed. "Rascal, are you trying to anger me to death? Didn't I warn you not to have anything to do with this woman? The sooner you cut off the relationship between you and her, the better. I don't approve of her, so naturally, I won't allow her to take half a step into the Mu family. I've told you this clearly, but you didn't listen, did you?" Gong Jia heard the commotion and walked to the door. However, when he saw this scene, a cold light flashed in his deep eyes. A cold arc appeared on his lips. He walked to Yun Shishir expressionlessly, but his exceptionally cold gaze landed on Mu Linfeng. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he did not notice that the indifferent man standing behind Yun Shishir had completely exploded in anger. "I heard about your engagement from someone else. You hid it from everyone in the Mu family and actually came here to get engaged with this unknown woman? I think you're going to ruin the Mu family's reputation." "Shut up. Shut up." Chapter 1814. Gong Jia and Mu Yaja spoke in unison, almost at the same time. As soon as he said that, the 2 men exchanged glances. Gong Jia's eyes, however, were filled with inexplicable hostility. He instinctively pulled Yun Shishir aside and looked at Mu Yaja unhappily. His eyes were burning with anger as he pointed at Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin. "What's going on?" He had thought that this engagement ceremony would receive everyone's blessings. However, these 2 people had suddenly jumped out to criticize him. Gong Jia sized up the middle-aged man and woman standing in front of him. Based on their words, he could tell who they were. They should be from the Mu family. However, they had been so aggressive from the moment they appeared. They even insulted his sister and called her a wild woman. These words fell clearly into his ears. What wild woman? When Gong Jia heard this, he was filled with anger but had nowhere to vent it. He held her hand tightly, and every joint in his body stiffened. Yun Shishir was shocked by Gong Jia's anger. She could not help but reach out to comfort Gong Jia's shoulder. However, she saw him glaring at Mu Yaja and questioning sternly, "How dare they call my sister a wild woman? Who gave them the guts?" Mu Linfeng was inexplicably furious when he heard this. Where did this arrogant brat come from? How dare he say such things? What did he mean by, "Who gave them the guts"? This man's tone was so arrogant. Did he know who he was shouting at? If he knew, he would probably feel the greatest remorse. Humph. It seemed that this brat was a typical example of a young and impetuous man. He probably did not know who he was offending. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he could not speak. Mu Shumen stood at the side and mocked, "Who is this arrogant brat? Looking at his face, he seems to be this wild woman's biological brother. The sister is shameless and wants to climb up the social ladder. As the brother, he should be shameless and want to use his sister's relationship with the Mu family to climb up the social ladder." "Shut up." Mu Yaja's eyes darkened as he reprimanded Mu Shumen. Mu Shumen was so angry that he frowned, and his face twitched. "Yaja. Who are you asking to shut up? I asked you to shut up." Mu Yaja was fuming. He stared at Gong Jia holding Yun Shishir's waist and said coldly, "Let her go. She's my sister, of course, I have to protect her. In the past, she was bullied because I wasn't around. Now, I won't let anyone humiliate her." As he spoke, he did not let go of her hand. He suddenly regretted it. This was only an engagement, and he had to watch as his sister was humiliated. Looking at the situation, it wasn't the first time this had happened. Gong Jia did not dare to imagine how much his sister had suffered when he was not around. What did this mean? This meant that this man could not protect his sister at all. This meant that he did not have the ability to do so. How could he be assured to hand his sister over to this man? He did not even have a reason to convince himself. At the thought of this, Gong Jia shielded Yun Shishir behind him even more. His protective stance agitated Mu Yaja even more. Chapter 18:15. She's not only your fiancée, but she's also my sister. She's my most important family member. Don't forget that I warned you before that if you let my sister suffer even the slightest grievance, I'll flatten the Mu group overnight. The anger that the two men had been suppressing was now unleashed without any restraint. For a moment, the two of them faced each other. Sparks flew, and the surrounding atmosphere turned cold in an instant. Gong Jia curled his lips and tightened his grip on Yun Shishir's hand. With a look of disdain, he said, "Moreover, it's just an engagement. She's not officially your wife yet." Yun Shishir glanced at Gong Jia and then at Mu Yaja. She bit her lip in annoyance and opened her mouth to say something, but Gong Jia said in a low voice, "Sister, don't say anything." "Shao Jia, shoo." Gong Jia put a finger on her lips, indicating for her to keep quiet. "I'm sorry, sister. I can control my temper in any matter, but not in this matter." "Shao Jia, you, listen. Just based on the fact that the Mu family called her a wild woman of unknown origin, I can't sit back and do nothing." With that, Gong Jia looked coldly at Mu Linfeng, but his gaze was full of hostility. Mu Linfeng, on the other hand, was taken aback by his insolent words. "Flatten the Mu group overnight?" Mu Shumen repeated, but she felt that it was very funny. She suddenly let out a cold snort. "You brat, not only do you have a big temper, your tone is also not small. I don't know what you're going to do to flatten the Mu group." Mu Linfeng was stunned and kept quiet. Why did he have a feeling that this man wasn't just spouting nonsense? He glanced at Gong Jia and gradually felt that although this young and arrogant man had an extraordinary aura, he was not a simple person. That was because he saw Gong Jia's eyes. Those were the arrogant eyes of a king. They were insufferably arrogant and unruly. It was as if he could trample the whole world under his feet if he wanted to. Gong Jia sneered and mocked, "Remember, my sister is nobler than you. You're not worthy of my sister." Mu Shumen's eyes were filled with anger, but they were full of mockery. "Not worthy of her? Who do you think your sister is? She's just a lowly commoner. Do you think that you can climb up the ranks and enjoy all the glory and wealth just because you're related to the Mu group? I think you're dreaming." Mu Yaja coldly replied, "Shut up. You have no right to speak here." Scram. Mu Shumen looked at him in disbelief and said, "What did you say? You're asking me to?" "Mu Yaja, I think you've lost your mind, haven't you? This woman is really scheming. I don't know what kind of bewitching potion she used to make you so infatuated with her. How can you side with an outsider? I'm your aunt, but what about you?" He actually dared to say such disgraceful words. "How dare you speak rudely to me for an outsider with ulterior motives?" How presumptuous. Wuxia said coldly, who's the one speaking rudely? Xianxia is my fiancée. In the future, she'll be my only wife. Show some respect. Chapter 1816. Who else could it be? Mu Shumin sneered, but every word of hers was laced with poison. Tell your sister, don't be delusional. Don't think that just because she's sucked up to the Mu family, she can really become a phoenix. Xianxia clenched her fists, so angry that she was at a loss for words. Gong Jie's heart ached as he hugged her tightly. He was so angry that his face turned cold. He looked up, and his eyes were sharp as he said word by word, "He ba. Make her shut up." A fully armed man behind him took a step forward and slowly closed in on Mu Shumin. Mu Shumin looked at the man who was closing in on her. Seeing that he was fully armed, she inexplicably panicked. You. What are you doing? Just as she finished speaking, she felt a black shadow flash in front of her. When she suddenly reacted, that man had flashed behind her like a ghost. His large palm grabbed her chin and forcefully twisted, only to hear a very heavy sound. With a kacha sound, her chin was instantly dislocated. The immense pain made Mu Shumin break out in cold sweat. She held her injured chin and stammered, but because of her dislocated chin, she couldn't utter a coherent sentence. The man waved his hand again, and a fiery hot slap landed on her face. Instantly, she couldn't find her bearings. Mu Shumin was also someone who had served in the army for 3 years. She had trained her skills beyond that of an ordinary person. Even so, to her, this man's fighting ability was quite terrifying. She didn't even see how the man made his move. She felt the world spinning around her, and the next second, she was pathetically placed on the ground. This slap almost perforated her eardrums, and there was a loud buzzing sound in her ears, causing her to see black and white in front of her eyes. Even her brain was a little dazed. Xianxia was tongue-tied at this sight. She then turned to look at Gong Jia in shock. Wuxia's expression changed, but he didn't say a word. In fact, even if Gong Jia didn't do it, he would have done it. This Mu Shumin was really too presumptuous. When Mu Linfeng saw this, he was inexplicably shocked and furious. Stop. He ba. Continue to hit her. Gong Jia, who was holding Xianxia in his arms, casually said this. Mu Linfeng was about to stop him, but the man pushed him aside. Mu Shumin was in so much pain that she was in tears. However, in the next second, she felt her collar was pulled up again. Then, she was ruthlessly slapped, one after another, until she didn't even have the chance to cry out in pain. It was a horrible scene. Although it was a man's, it was a mercenary. But for mercenaries, there was no such thing. He only obeyed the orders of his employer. Whatever the employer asked him to do, he would do it without hesitation. His execution was top-notch. Mu Linfeng stood at the side, looking anxious and angry. He looked at Wuxia, who was watching indifferently from the start, with a hateful expression. You're just going to watch your aunt be humiliated, aren't you? Mu Linfeng glared at him fiercely, his voice trembling badly. Wuxia sneered. Only in this aspect, he and Gong Jia were on the same side. Second uncle, you're wrong. Aunt's mouth really needs to be disciplined. Since that's the case, why don't we discipline her properly? Otherwise, he really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Chapter 1817. Therefore, since someone was willing to help him, why wouldn't he do it? As a nephew, he could not be rude to his aunt, or he would be offending his superior. However, if Gong Jia were to step in, it would be considered as helping Xianxia vent her anger. Even if Gong Jia did not step in this time, Wuxia would still secretly teach Mu Shumin a lesson. Stop. Stop hitting him. Mu Linfeng stomped his feet in anger. Gong Jia remained expressionless as he held Xianxia's shoulders and looked coldly at Mu Shumin, who was being punched and kicked on the ground, without any intention of backing down. It was as if this was the only way to appease his unhappiness. Herba was one of the top experts by Gong Jia's side. As a veteran mercenary of mercenary paradise, he had a lot of experience. After 10 years of war, his body was practically made of steel. Even the blood flowing in his body was like a strong liquid made of molten iron. Don't be fooled by the fact that he didn't use much strength in that punch. Even so, with just a few slaps, she would definitely fall apart. Mu Shumin was beaten black and blue, but even so, Gong Jia had no intention of retracting his order. He had decided to beat this woman, who had offended his sister, to death. In front of Yun Shishir, he might be obedient and docile like a sheep without any temper, but other than that, in the eyes of his subordinates, Gong Jia was a rather vicious and merciless person. How vicious and merciless was he? It could be said that he was an extremely vicious person despite his young age. Anyone who angered him would end up in an especially tragic state. Yun Shishir's heart skipped a beat as she watched. Even though she detested this woman for speaking without restraint, Gong Jia's subordinates were still too ruthless in their actions. She could not bear to watch any longer. This was definitely not a joke. If this went on, one could imagine that even if she did not lose half her life, she would have a few broken ribs. But the current atmosphere was too strange. While Mu Yaja remained unmoved, Gong Jia's face remained impassive. In fact, his lips even curled into a sinister smile. Thus, she said fearfully, "Shao Jia, stop hitting me. If this goes on, she'll lose her life." "Sis. You don't have to speak for her. Have you forgotten what she said about you?" Gong Jia said expressionlessly, "How dare this woman humiliate you? I will never forgive her." Mu Linfeng retorted furiously, "How arrogant of you. Do you know who we are? How dare you touch the Mu family? Do you know what kind of disgraceful thing you're doing? If you continue beating him like this, you'll beat him to death. How dare you?" Gong Jia glanced coldly at Mu Linfeng and said nonchalantly, "I want her life. You dare to bully my sister? You deserve to die. Otherwise, do you think that the Gong family can be bullied by any Tom, Dick, or Harry? The Mu family? Who do you think you are? Do you think that the Mu family can do whatever you want and bully others? I'd like to see if the Mu family or the Gong family is more capable." Mu Linfeng was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. The Gong family? What did this man just say? The Gong family? Could he be from the Gong family? Chapter 18:18. The only thing she was concerned about now was that Mu Shumin was about to lose her life. Even though she hated her, today was the happiest day of her life. She did not want to cause any bloodshed because of one person. She would not feel good if they parted on bad terms because of this. Hence, she said in a pleading tone, "Shao Jia, listen to me, okay? At least not here. Today is my engagement day. Don't make such a big fuss. Don't overdo it. Okay?" When Gong Jia heard this, he frowned but did not object forcefully. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes abruptly. With a sharp gaze, he said, "Stop." Almost at the same time he finished speaking, Herba stopped and retreated behind him, ready to receive orders at any time. "You're too heavy-handed. What if you kill her?" Gong Jia reprimanded impatiently. Ba looked confused. Didn't he ask him to be heavy-handed? Today is my sister's important day. How unlucky would it be if I kill her and get covered in blood? Gong Jia reprimanded again. Whatever Yun Shishir said, it was the truth. According to his original intention, a woman like her should be killed as soon as possible. However, his sister said that he could not kill anyone on such an important day. He immediately changed his stance and stood on the same side as Yun Shishir. The corners of Mu Yaja's eyes twitched fiercely. This Gong Jia was really not an ordinary person. In front of his subordinates and Yun Shishir, he was Satan on one side and an angel on the other. Earlier, he had viciously said that he wanted Mu Shumin's life. Once Yun Shishir spoke, he immediately flapped his wings like an adorable little angel and flew around Yun Shishir. Mu Linfeng walked to Mu Shumin only to see her lying face down on the ground, unconscious. When he turned her over with difficulty, he saw that her eyes were rolled back, her face was covered in blood, and her entire body was limp. Especially her 2 arms, they were curled up at an extremely twisted angle, as if they had been severely fractured, twisted into a terrifying angle. It was a tragic sight. It was already not easy to keep her life. Mu Linfeng's mind was in a mess. Hence, he did not care much and hurriedly called for people to carry Mu Shumin to the island's infirmary. As he escorted Mu Shumin away, he glared fiercely at Gong Jia with a hostile look. His heart was full of vigilance. This man was simply a terrifying existence. Mu Linfeng snorted coldly and left in a hurry. Mu Yaja expressionlessly ordered people to clean the mess on the ground. Gong Jia was unhappy to see Mu Shumin's infirmary. Hence, he comforted Yun Shishir. Sister. Don't spoil the fun because of her. She bullied you, and I've already ruthlessly retaliated. With today's lesson, she definitely won't let you suffer in the future. Shao Jia, don't you think you've gone overboard? Yun Shishir interrupted him. Gong Jia was stunned and looked at her with a hurt expression. How have I gone overboard? When did you become so violent? Yun Shishir looked at him sadly. She felt that she had inadvertently caught a glimpse of the terrifying and cold expression on his face just now. Somehow, she felt that this younger brother in front of her seemed a little unfamiliar. Gong Jia's gaze was stunned and he was full of grievances. Sister. How can you say that? How am I violent? Chapter 18-19. You're still saying that you're not violent after beating her up like that? But she bullied you. I'm standing up for you. I don't need you to stand up for me. Yun Shishir said angrily, I don't like such a violent Shao Jia. You couldn't even bear to hurt a stray cat in the past, but now you can actually say something as scary as I just want her life. You weren't like this in the past. She didn't think that it was wrong for Gong Jia to stand up for her. However, she felt that Gong Jia had a scary side to him that she didn't know about. In her memory, her Shao Jia wasn't such a ruthless person. Perhaps it was because of some kind of telepathy. She felt that Shao Jia was a little different from the child who always stuck behind her when he was young. Back then, Shao Jia was innocent, cute, and innocent. Sometimes he was mischievous, sometimes he was docile, but at least he was kind. However, the Gong Jia of today, although he was as docile as a lamb in front of her, she realized how scary he was when he accidentally revealed his disguise in front of her. She wasn't a ruthless person. Mu Shumin did go overboard just now, but Shao Jia actually said that he just wanted her life. How could he say such cruel words so easily? Yun Shishir couldn't help but suspect his identity. She suddenly asked suspiciously, Shao Jia, what do you do for a living? Can you tell me? Why do you have such a powerful personal bodyguard? Why are you always so busy, flying all over the world? Why have you become so ruthless, so arrogant that you don't put anyone in your eyes? What is your identity? I have a feeling that you're hiding something from me. Is that so? Gong Jia was stunned. He wanted to say something but stopped himself. He didn't dare to say it. He was afraid that if he told the truth, his sister would be afraid of him and distance herself from him. Yun Shishir saw his evasive gaze and was disappointed. You don't want to be honest with me, do you? Gong Jia said hesitantly, Sis, don't tell me, sis, don't let your imagination run wild. Gong Jia was a little flustered as he comforted her. Don't let your imagination run wild, okay? I didn't mean to hide it from you, it's just. Just what? Yun Shishir narrowed her eyes. Shao Jia, I know I shouldn't interfere with your personal life. But there are some things that I really don't understand. I have a feeling that you and I are different. I'm like a commoner, but you give people the feeling that you're the supreme ruler who controls life and death. When she stood beside him, she would often feel suffocated by his domineering aura. Gong Jia remained silent, unsure of how to come clean with her. She smiled helplessly and casually said, Since you're willing to be honest and want to hide it from me, then continue hiding it from me. After saying that, she suddenly let go of his hand. Feeling nervous, the man reached out to grab her hand. But she coldly avoided him. Gong Jia looked at her with hurt, but he could only watch helplessly as she held onto Mu Yaja's arm and slowly walked away. Mu Yaja looked at him coldly and then, as if to provoke him, slowly walked away with a playful smile. Gong Jia was so angry that he clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Do you think I should be honest with her about my identity? Chapter 1820. Yu Yu rolled his eyes. He took a sip of his cola and suddenly leaned forward mysteriously. He lowered his voice and said, "Do you know why I hid the fact that I'm in the hurricane group from Mommy?" "Why?" Gong Jia asked, puzzled. Yu Yu sniffled and said pitifully, "If Mommy found out that I was involved in smuggling, she would beat my ass." He sighed and shook his head. "That's why I tried so hard to hide it until now. Even Mommy doesn't know my identity. In Mommy's eyes, I'm an innocent and cute child. So, I'll play this role well. If she finds out that I've been doing these things behind her back, I'll definitely be beaten up badly." Gong Jia was utterly impressed. "You were able to hide it from her for so long without being found out." "That's because I'm good at acting." Yu Yu was quite proud. Gong Jia was silent. He drank the dry red wine in his glass and said dejectedly, "She said that I've changed. She said that I've become more ruthless." "Yu Yu, is that true?" Yu Yu sipped on his cola and gave him a look, telling him to figure it out for himself. Gong Jia frowned. "What do you mean by that look?" "I think Mommy's right. Uncle, you're really ruthless." Yu Yu spread his hands and pretended to be innocent. "How am I ruthless?" Yu Yu rolled his eyes and said, "Haha. Hanging a pirate on a cargo ship under the scorching sun for 3 days and drying him alive. Only my dear uncle would do such a heartless thing." Gong Jia was silent again. "He hijacked my cargo ship and shot one of my crew members. Leaving him under the scorching sun for 3 days is considered a light punishment. Then using a live hostage as a gun to practice shooting, only you would do that, right?" Yu Yu asked again. Gong Jia defended himself. "That hostage was the leader of a terrorist organization and wanted to assassinate me." Yu Yu was speechless. Gong Jia felt good about himself and said, "Actually, I feel that I'm very kind." Yu Yu looked at him as if he was looking at a hopeless idiot. "Uncle, I think your worldview might be a little different from Mommy's." "Why?" Yu Yu seriously. "Look, in Mommy's worldview, killing, arson, smuggling, armed, these people are defined as bad people." Gong Jia nodded thoughtfully. "But there are so many options. How many of them do you have? Have you killed anyone?" "Yes." "Have you set fires?" "I bombed the presidents." Do you smuggle? Do you have an armed group?" Yu Yu shrugged helplessly and then laughed. "Look. In Mommy's heart, you're a heinous villain." Gong Jia was instantly disheartened and felt that there was nothing left to live for. "Also, Mommy might be angry because she feels that you're hiding something from her. She actually cares about you a lot and wants to integrate into your world, but you seem to be deliberately hiding things from her, making her feel lonely. After all, Mommy's heart is more sensitive and fragile." "Then what should I do? Should I tell her everything?" Yu Yu said, "Then let her know that you've killed people, set fires, and committed all kinds of crimes?" Gong Jia was speechless. He couldn't tell her the truth. Chapter 1821. If you tell Mommy the truth, she will be frightened. If she finds out that the brother she has been taking care of since young is such a scary person. TSK TSK TSK. Yu Yu was gloating over his brother's misfortune. "Then help me think of a solution and tell me how to deal with this," Gong Jia ordered. Little Munchkin said proudly, "I won't do it. Do as you see fit. You have to deal with your own problems, don't push it to others." With that, he stood up and was about to leave. Gong Jia, who was behind him, suddenly flashed an evil smile. "You want to leave?" "Sure. My dear little nephew, I don't mind dragging you down with me. When the time comes, I'll tell your mommy that you're in the same organization as me, and you've also killed people, set fires, and even hacked into the Pentagon's defense network to smuggle firearms. Guess what her expression will be like? Yu Yu paused and turned around, giving Gong Jia a murderous look. How dare you? Do you think I won't? Gong Jia was not afraid of the threat in his eyes. Yu Yu clenched his fists. He could not understand Gong Jia's thoughts and did not know if he would betray him. Hence, he took a deep breath and walked back to the table, forcing himself to sit down in front of him. Gong Jia poured him half a glass of Coke gently and pushed it in front of him. If I have to think of a solution, why don't we not deal with it? What? Deal with it coldly. Don't mention this matter. When this is over, make up an identity for her. Mommy will believe you. Gong Jia was speechless. So simple. What else can we do? Mommy can be smart sometimes, but most of the time, she is very stupid. Gong Jia nodded thoughtfully and suddenly looked at Yu Yu with a deep gaze. Yu Yu. Yes? Can I ask you a question? What is it? Gong Jia suddenly approached him, stared into his eyes, and asked in a deep voice, Are you willing to go to the headquarters with me? My father wants to see you. Yu Yu's expression froze as his eyes widened in astonishment. Your father wants to see me? According to his position, he is your superior. According to seniority, you should call him grandfather. Yu Yu frowned but did not say a word. Suddenly, he asked curiously, Why does he want to see me? As the #1 genius of the Hurricane Group and one of the developers of the Heavenly Eye, I'm naturally curious about your true face. He has already mentioned this to me for a long time, but he always considered that you might not be willing, so he never put it on the agenda. It just so happens that he wants to ask for your opinion. Yu Yu fell silent again. Gong Jia asked, Why? You don't want to? No. Yu Yu shook his head and said truthfully, Before I knew he was my grandfather, I had always wanted to see him. In my heart, he is a very powerful paragon. He was able to develop the Hurricane Group into such a magnificent territory. He is a genius leader and the person I admire the most. After a pause, he suddenly laughed and said, But after knowing he is my grandfather, I am not so impulsive about wanting to see him. Why? Yu Yu said truthfully, Because I don't know what identity I should use to see him. Gong Jia was speechless. Chapter 1822. Unless Mommy is willing to return to the Gong family. If that's the case, then I will be willing to see him. Gong Jia slowly poured himself a glass of red wine. His slender fingers gently caressed the rim of the glass as if deep in thought. Yu Yu pursed his lips and smiled helplessly. No matter what, he would always be on the same side as Mommy. If he did not care about Mommy and returned to the Gong family with Gong Jia, then Gong Jia's father would be able to recognize him at first glance based on his facial features. When that time came, he would find out that it was Mommy. If it caused Mommy trouble, that would not be something he wanted to see. Gong Jia sized him up and suddenly remembered that Yun Shishir was unwilling to return to the Gong family because of Muyaja. He felt wronged. He asked, Yu Yu, why do you think a woman can sacrifice everything for love? Yu Yu was stunned. The corners of his eyes twitched violently as he silently complained, Uncle, I'm your nephew, not an encyclopedia. You don't have to ask me everything, do you? Because Uncle feels that my little nephew knows everything from heaven to earth. Since you're so smart, you'll definitely be able to give me an answer. Gong Jia lazily rested his chin on his hand and looked at him silently. Yu Yu was silent. Then, he calmly stirred the cola in his glass. He bit the straw and blew on it until it bubbled. He took a sip and said vaguely, Because we have different views on love. Love, to a man, may only be a part of a man. But to a woman, it may be her everything. When Gong Jia heard this, he was shocked. He sighed and said, Yu Yu, are you a relationship expert? You've said the essence of it in one sentence. Yu Yu looked at him with disdain and said coldly, I can't be considered a relationship expert. This is what I've read in books. Gong Jia's lips curled into a smile. He felt that this little nephew of his who was still childish but spoke with such sharp words was too cute. I still can't understand women who see love as their everything. Yu glanced at him from the corner of his eyes and asked nonchalantly, Uncle, have you been in a relationship before? Gong Jia frowned. Why are you asking this? Asking about your relationship history? Why, can't I ask? I don't have a relationship history. Gong Jia replied. Yu clicked his tongue and said disdainfully, no wonder. So you've never been in a relationship? Uncle, have you been with a woman? What? That means, a relationship between a man and a woman without a romantic relationship. For example, a spiritual partner? You. Pfft. Gong Jia couldn't help but spit a mouthful of red wine on Yu's face. Yu shut his eyes abruptly. His rosy cheeks were flushed red, and he instantly looked a little disheveled. His long and thick eyelashes, in particular, were stained with the wine. His delicate brows furrowed slightly in displeasure, but he managed to keep his emotions under control and did not explode. Gong Jia looked at him blankly and said apologetically, Yu, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Yu didn't want to bother with him. He took a warm handkerchief and carefully wiped his face clean. Chapter 1823. Gong Jia's mind was in a mess. Please, it wasn't that he didn't pay attention to his manners, it was that he couldn't tolerate it. No. Stop. Okay. What was a physical relationship? Who had ever seen such words coming out of the mouth of a 7-year-old child? Had anyone ever seen it before? Therefore, he was caught off guard and was caught off guard. This child was really a mischievous child. Gong Jia held back his laughter and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What do you mean by a physical relationship? What do you mean by, your little brain can't think? A physical relationship is a relationship between a man and a woman that is maintained purely from a biological point of view. If I were to use a simpler term to describe it, it would be, bed partners. Gong Jia was dumbfounded. Yu tilted his head elegantly and asked calmly, why? Am I wrong? What nonsense is your little brain thinking about all day? How do you even know about this? Cough, cough. Gong Jia was once again flustered. He felt that it was a little too far-fetched. Yu smiled and said, I've been studying psychology and sociology recently. Yes, that's what I've been studying recently. Gong Jia lectured him sternly, it's too early for you to be concerned about this. I've always been so ahead of myself. It's good to spend more effort on your studies. Gong Jia smiled and said, don't look at this messy psychology. Have you revised your homework? Yu curled his lips in disdain and said casually, I've already prepared my homework for the third-year science course in high school. So, it's really boring normally. Gong Jia was still dumbfounded. You're lying. How was that possible? He was only in elementary school at this age. How could he understand such profound knowledge in high school? He had already prepared for it. That was so unbelievable. Gong Jia took a deep breath and found it hard to believe. Yu said disdainfully, these questions are very simple. I'll know them after flipping through the books once. As for the humanities, I'm not interested. Anyway, it's all rote memorization. I'm not interested in preparing for it. Gong Jia, no wonder this child's EQ was so high. It turned out that he spent all his extra time studying psychology. That was too scary. When his sister gave birth to him, she must have had a genetic mutation to give birth to such a shocking genius. I'm guessing that you've never been in a relationship before, Mommy's actions. In fact, women were more emotional creatures, and most of them lacked a sense of security. That's why they values their families as family. Actually, I understand Mommy. Mommy tests right, Mommy tease her tt she test, t. Therefore, in order to protect her family, she did not hesitate to give up everything, t. Even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. You don't understand women. You make it sound like you know a lot, Gong Jia said indignantly. Mommy and I depended on each other since we were young. I'm the one who understands Mommy the most. Don't I have the right to speak? Gong Jia was speechless. I'm talking to a cow. I don't even have a woman at my age. You won't understand even if I explain it to you. Yu mocked. Chapter 1824. He suddenly glanced at him meaningfully from the corner of his eyes and snickered. Don't tell me. Uncle is still a pure and innocent virgin? Gong Jia's handsome face instantly flushed red with shyness. He furrowed his brows and tried to pretend to be calm, but even so, his body's reaction was very honest. Even the tips of his ears had turned red. Yu's mouth opened into an O shape. He was overjoyed. No wonder. It turns out that uncle is a little virgin. Gong Jia pretended to be serious and looked at Yu who was snickering. He pretended to threaten him. Don't laugh. Pfft. Gong Jia was furious. Yu, are you looking down on me? Of course. Uncle is already 24 years old. You probably haven't touched a woman's finger. Well, it's not that I haven't touched a woman. Gong Jia said unwillingly, previously, I was drugged by a woman at a party. I almost died in her hands. Yu's eyes lit up when he heard that there was gossip to dig up. He curiously went forward and asked, what happened after that? I broke one of her hands. Yu was stunned. So violent? It was very like his style. Then, how did you solve it? Gong Jia cleared his throat awkwardly and coughed a few times. Suddenly, he said, I soaked in an ice pool for a night. Yu was dumbfounded. Uncle, are you so cruel to yourself? Gong Jia touched his forehead. Yu smiled and said, women are a very charming little animal. I feel that Mommy is a completely different person from before she fell in love. In the past, she was a standard career woman. She always liked to shoulder all the responsibilities on her own as if she was indestructible and could bear all the responsibilities. After she fell in love, she instantly turned into a clingy little mommy. Daddy spoiled her like a little princess. It was only after she fell in love that I realized how cute she was when she acted spoiled. Women still need to be pampered. Of course, this is something that some single dogs who have never been in a relationship will never understand. Gong Jia felt that he had been hit hard again. He was suddenly amused by Yu's serious and innocent expression. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch his cheeks. Xiao Bao, how can you be so cute? You're so smart. His phone suddenly rang. Gong Jia glanced at the screen and saw that it was a call from Yunshishir. He exchanged glances with Yu. Yu gave him a look, and Gong Jia immediately picked up the phone. Sis, little Jia, Yunshishir's slightly helpless and guilty voice came from the other end. Just now I shouldn't have been so fierce to you. Sis was wrong, I didn't do it on purpose. Yunshishir's voice sounded helpless and weak. After she calmed down, she realized that her tone had been very hurtful. In her guilt, she called him to apologize. I'm being overly sensitive. Perhaps you're hiding it from me because you have a reason that you have to tell me. But in my eyes, you're still the innocent and cute little Jia in my heart. The things I said before were all done on impulse. I wasn't serious. Don't take it to heart. When Gong Jia heard this, he smiled slightly and his heart suddenly softened. Chapter 1825. Upon hearing this, Yunshishir's expression softened. Gong Jia had always been like this. When she was young, he couldn't bear to see anyone bully her. In the past, whenever she was bullied by older children, he would always be the first to protect her. He was like her guardian angel, always the first to appear by her side. She still remembered that once, Xiao Jia got into a fight with a group of children to protect her. There were many of them, and he could only fight alone. Naturally, he could not win against them all. He was covered in injuries and his face was bruised and swollen. She was so scared that she cried herself hoarse. She tried to go forward a few times, but he pushed her away. In the end, it was the adults who rushed over. Only then did the group of children stop and disperse. However, he was beaten until he almost fainted. That was the most overboard incident. It was also the incident that left the deepest impression on her. Xianxia said, "I know. As for my identity, I'll find a suitable time to tell you." Okay. After hanging up, Gong Jia and Yu gave each other a high five. I told you. Mommy will definitely regret being so fierce to you. She's the most soft-hearted. Yu was the one who knew his mother best. After the engagement banquet ended, Jianghu actually did as he promised and obediently sent over a big red packet. Xianxia opened it and saw that it was a 7-figure sum. It was a generous gift, and she did not know whether to laugh or cry. She could almost imagine Jianghu's aggrieved expression at this moment. She didn't expect that her unintentional joke would be taken seriously by him. When she returned to her room, she looked at the mountain of presents and felt happy and sweet. At this moment, she finally understood why the bride was the happiest woman in the world on the day of her wedding. It was probably because every relationship went through ups and downs before finally bearing fruit. Being able to spend time with the person you love was probably the most blissful expression. At this moment, a line from a song suddenly flashed across her mind. I've finally waited for you. Luckily, I didn't give up. Happiness comes with great difficulty, so people cherish it even more. Suddenly, the sound of approaching footsteps came from behind. Xianxia suddenly came back to her senses. Just as she was about to turn around, a pair of strong arms tightly wrapped around her waist. Wuxia hugged her from behind and pulled her into his embrace. He lowered his eyelashes and buried his handsome face in her hair, greedily sniffing the fragrance of her hair. What are you thinking about? His gentle and magnetic voice was close to her ears. His warm breath constantly brushed against her elegant and enchanting neck, but it caused her entire body to tremble. Just as she shrunk her shoulders back, who would have thought that he would suddenly press against her ear and intimately suck on her cute little earlobe, but it caused her heart to beat like thunder. What? Don't be like this, Xianxia gently pushed him away. Being teased like this, she felt a little ticklish, so she rebuked, You're making me itchy like this. Who asked you to be so seductive and seduced me? Don't tell me you're allowed to push me away. The man smiled, but he was not forced back by her rejection. Instead, he became even more aggressive. He bit her earlobe and intimately sucked on it. After a few teasing, her face immediately reacted and spread like a fire. The blush spread from her cheeks to her ears and even her body was slightly hot. Chapter 1826. Don't, Xianxia couldn't stand the tickling and giggled. His breath on her neck made her unbearable. Just as she was about to beg for mercy, he grabbed her shoulders and suddenly turned her body around. He hugged her waist and supported her forcefully. Wuxia lowered his gaze, admiring her bashful and seductive look, especially her pair of well-defined eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, which accentuated her coquettishness. She looked extremely seductive when she smiled. Little idiot, do you know? Wuxia nodded and leaned closer to her. He looked at her from an extremely close distance. Their lips were connected and the tips of their noses were touching. Even her eyelashes could feel the touch of his face clearly. Such an intimate distance made her heart beat like a drum. Every sound seemed to be echoing in her ears. He pressed his lips against hers and breathed out, but left a sentence that made her face burn even more. You're so beautiful right now. Xianxia was so shy that she couldn't understand. She clenched her fists nervously and didn't know how to respond to him. Even if it wasn't the first time they were intimate, her reaction was still like a young girl. She bit her lips shyly and didn't know how to react. She clasped her hands behind her back and intertwined her fingers tightly together. Her delicate lips were stiff as if they were tightly pressed together. His praise carried a hint of ambiguity. No matter how stupid she was, she could feel that his body was tense at this moment, all of which was telling her that he desired her. Do you know? I've been holding it in until now. I really want to take you. Wuxia whispered sweet nothings into her ear, but it made her heart beat faster and she couldn't resist. She didn't realize that when this man said sweet nothings, he could be so deadly and bewitching. She pursed her lips and half rejected him. That's not very good, right? Right now, it's not night time yet. You don't have to care so much. Wuxia hugged her and wanted to kiss her red lips. Xianxia avoided him again. Looking at his urgent attack, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Wait. The curtains are still open. She blushed as she looked at the wide-open floor-to-ceiling window in shock. She wanted to signal him to close the window. However, Wuxia was indifferent. He didn't care if the window was closed or not. He held her in his arms and couldn't wait to kiss those delicate lips that were silently seducing him. Once he kissed her, he couldn't bear to part. He hugged her tightly and couldn't bear to let go. The deep kiss made her blush. Window. Wuxia didn't have the patience to listen to her. No man liked to drag things out, especially when he had endured for such a long time. It wasn't easy for him to deal with those annoying fellows and finally have some private space with her. Hence, some things naturally had to be done in a race against time. Chapter 1827. Her heart calmed down a little. In the next second, her body was in free fall and fell onto the soft Simmons bed. Because of the elasticity, her body bounced a few times and quickly sank into it. The man's tall body covered her and pinned her down, making her unable to move. Xianxia complained in grievance, "Woo! You're so heavy." Just as she finished speaking, she heard the man's low laughter. In the next moment, he hugged her and turned around. When she reacted, she had already switched positions with him. He was lying on the bed, and she, on the other hand, was already straddling him in an extremely suggestive posture. A certain point coincidentally allowed her to clearly feel the slightest change in his body. It was menacing, but it made her heart beat like thunder. The man teased her and held her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. He teasingly asked, "Looks like you prefer to take the initiative." When Xianxia heard this, her face became even hotter. Luckily, the room was dark at this moment, so the man did not see her embarrassed expression. She was not used to this position. Sitting on top of him like this made her feel very uneasy. It was inevitable that she was at a loss. In this aspect, compared to men's aggressive attacks, women were often more passive. It was difficult for them to take the initiative to conquer a man. To her, this was an even more difficult problem to overcome. However, Wuxia was extremely interested. He wanted to see how charming and enchanting it would be if she was on top. However, with this idea in mind, this woman was not enlightened. She was stunned for a long time and did not move. Wuxia reached out his hand and touched her cheek, across her shoulder and neck. At the same time, he easily untied the silk sash on her back. The gown immediately slid off her shoulders, revealing her chest. She lowered her head and helplessly bit her lips. She was at a loss as to what to do. Her helpless look made him laugh. "What, you don't know what to do?" The man's question made her even more embarrassed and at a loss. From the beginning to the end, she lowered her head, not knowing how to respond or what to do. The man chuckled and said, "What an idiot." Taking advantage of the situation, he took off her clothes and climbed onto her shoulders and neck. Then, he moved his hands all the way down, carrying out a mysterious exploration. Xianxia bit her lips. Her face was so hot that it was about to burn. He took off the gown on her body, and the beauty in front of him was almost unobstructed. She didn't know what to do, so she could only freeze and let him explore her body. When he went deeper, she couldn't help but feel a little helpless, so she couldn't help but tense up. The man's evil charming smile, loved her so shy appearance, kissed her lips, pried open her lips, with a strong offensive, all the way to the deep invasion. She involuntarily moaned. When she came back to her senses, she realized that she had involuntarily moaned. However, she felt even more ashamed and covered her mouth. It was a little embarrassing. She Why couldn't she hold it in? How could she? The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she felt. I like it. He kissed her soothingly. I like your voice. You're not allowed to suppress yourself. Xianxia pursed her lips, but she also noticed the tension in the man's voice. Chapter 1828. That was the place where he was most sensitive. When she kissed him just now, this action was more like a silent provocation. The man felt an electric shock spread all the way to his limbs and bones, especially. Since the wedding, he had been enduring himself until now. There were some things that did not need to be secretive anymore. It was better to be more direct. Thus, he nimbly took off her gown. To him, the current her was even more stunning than when she was in her gown. His body also started to become excited. In this position, he took possession of her. From the initial gentle invasion, until later, he could no longer hold himself back and gradually became fierce. Wuxia, she became more and more uneasy from his fierce attack and could not help but softly call out his name. Her weak voice was like a kitten's, but she did not know that this made it harder for him to restrain himself. The emotions that he had suppressed for a long time were like stormy waves, instantly drowning her. In the midst of the extreme joy, she was a little helpless. In the midst of his emotions, he could not help but lean close to her ear and bite her earlobe, murmuring her name over and over again. Xianxia, he gently called out her name. His charming voice made people unable to resist him. She closed her eyes and allowed herself to sink into it. When she fell into it, she was drenched in sweat. Gradually, she could not take it anymore. She panted and her breathing lost its frequency and became a little hurried. Don't, slow down, she was a little unable to bear his overbearing possession, but she could not muster any strength at all. She could only beg for mercy weakly. Unfortunately, her pleas for mercy did not enter his ears at all, and he allowed his senses to continue to work on her. When it ended, she finally could not take it anymore and collapsed in his arms. Her entire body was soft and powerless. She nestled in his arms and panted hurriedly like a patient who could not breathe on her own. He looked at her and felt that her current appearance was both cute and funny. It was just one round, but she was so disappointing that she collapsed. He really did not know what to say about her. Didn't I tell you to train more? You're so weak. He scolded her in dissatisfaction, but his tone couldn't hide the adoration. She was panting, but her entire body was in a daze. Whatever he said, she couldn't hear a single word as she focused on regulating her own breathing. Wuxia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He also couldn't bear to torment her anymore. He hugged her and fell on the bed, constantly stroking her back. He knew that she probably didn't sleep well last night. That was why he was in such a sorry state when dealing with matters of the heart. He hugged her, his fingers going through her hair as he pulled her head into his embrace. Even if there was a part of his body that was not satisfied yet, he could not bear to take her anymore. There was no hurry to continue once she recovered her strength. He couldn't torment her too much. The next time this stupid woman saw him, he was afraid that her legs would go weak. Under his comforting words, her breathing gradually calmed down. She leaned against his chest and closed her eyes. Just now, for a moment, she felt that her brain was short of oxygen and her entire body was floating in the clouds. This man, in this aspect, was extremely strong. He always had the ability to torment her until she fell apart. At that time, he was sitting back and admiring her seductive posture. The more he looked, the more he couldn't bear to let go. Chapter 1829. Suddenly, there was the sound of footsteps outside the door. Wuxia was alerted and furrowed his brows. Then, there was a knock on the door. Xiao Yichen's voice passed through the door and into their ears. Daddy, Mommy, are you there? Hearing little Yichen's voice, Xianxia was jolted back to her senses from her exhaustion. She was greatly startled. Before they could react, a click was heard. It seemed to be the sound of the door opening from the outside. Seeing that no one was responding, Yichen actually swaggered through the door. Daddy, Mommy? Mu Yichen had already walked through the door with a confused look on his face. When Yun Shishir realized that the child had already walked through the door, she was so shocked that she wanted to scream. Oh, my God! Why wasn't the door locked? Mu Yaja, on the other hand, was extremely calm as he pulled the blanket over her body. He, on the other hand, elegantly covered himself with his suit jacket. He was considered fully armed. He didn't make a sound, but he didn't expect that Mu Yichen didn't walk in at all. The room was divided into two areas. One was the walk-in closet and the living room, and the other was the bedroom. The two areas were separated by an arched door, and the bedroom was at the innermost area. Therefore, when Mu Yichen walked in, he first walked around the living room. When he didn't see anyone, he said, "Oh," and turned to leave the room. How could this naive little fellow have guessed that at this moment, his daddy and mommy were having some kind of friendly conversation? However, due to his good upbringing, he didn't take another step inside. After all, he had been taught etiquette since he was young. When he entered someone's room, without the owner's permission, he would never step into the bedroom. Therefore, he didn't even walk into the bedroom. When he saw that there was no one in the living room, he went straight out. He closed the door on his way out. Yun Shishir's heart finally settled down. It seemed like it was a false alarm. After being frightened by Mu Yichen, he broke out in a cold sweat. Mu Yaja lowered his eyes and saw that she was still in shock. He couldn't help but laugh and pinched her cheek. This one won't be scared? What a coward. Yun Shishir glared at him angrily. He still had the nerve to say that? She was so angry that she was speechless. She hit him on the shoulder and said coquettishly, "Why didn't you remember to lock the door when you came in?" "I forgot." When he opened the door and saw her back, he was completely mesmerized. How could he remember that the door was unlocked? He was only looking at her. Naturally, he couldn't care about anything else. "You forgot?" Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If the child came in just now and saw such a scene, how awkward would that be? His casual remark about forgetting to lock the door gave her quite a scare. Mu Yaja, however, did not seem to realize his mistake at all. "It's fine. He doesn't know." Yun Shishir was speechless. This son of his didn't know anything about the matters between men and women. If he walked in and saw them, he would probably only blush, but he wouldn't know what they were doing. Yun Shishir didn't know what to say to him. "Go and lock the door," she urged. Mu Yaja smiled playfully and caressed her burning cheek. "Lock the door? Why? You still want to?" Chapter 1830. However, Mu Yaja wanted to tease her. Therefore, even though her cheeks were unreasonably hot, he still said, "If that's not what you mean, then what do you mean? Aren't you just worried that if the door isn't locked, you'll be disturbed again?" Yun Shishir was embarrassed to death by him. She immediately pushed his shoulder and glared at him, but there was a hint of wanting to say something. "You're bullying me. This life can be considered to be in your hands." She was angry, but the corners of her lips gradually lifted into a smile. She was at her wit's end when it came to this man's occasional bad taste. It was obvious that he was making fun of her. However, she was very thin-skinned, so she couldn't do anything to him. He hugged her, but smiled. "What do you mean by your life is in my hands? You sound so wronged when you say that. Isn't that so?" Yun Shishir pouted coquettishly. "All right. Whatever you say, it's the law." Mu Yaja hugged her and coaxed her softly, magnanimously not caring about her quick tongue. He got off the bed, went to the door, and locked it. Yun Shishir's heart finally settled down. It seemed that if the door wasn't locked, she wouldn't feel safe. Mu Yaja turned around. As he moved, the suit on his body suddenly fell to the ground. In an instant, his perfect figure, which was like a sculpture of a god, was exposed to the air. But he didn't feel embarrassed at all, so he walked over in such a grand manner. Yun Shishir glanced at him. Her gaze fell on his golden ratio figure, which was comparable to an international model's. His sexy abs and mermaid line were filled with an extremely seductive aura. Especially that pair of strong and powerful arms, which made him even more beautiful and suffocating. As she looked, her face couldn't help but turn as red as blood. Even though the two of them were already considered intimate, at this moment, she still felt her face burning when she looked at his naked body. Wuxia saw that her deer-like gaze was fixed on him from beginning to end. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, but he smiled playfully. "Have you seen enough?" Xianxia was stunned. When she came back to her senses, she met his mischievous eyes. She pursed her lips. "You should put on your clothes." "Wear clothes?" Wuxia smiled wickedly. "I thought you liked it. Seeing you staring at me like that, I thought you liked it." Wuxia. He was making fun of her again. Xianxia was so angry that she was at a loss for words. In the end, she was so angry that she laughed. He walked forward and hugged her. At that moment, he was extremely greedy for this brief moment of warmth between the two of them. The two of them fooled around on the bed for a while. Xianxia was tossed around by him until she was exhausted. As a result, she actually fell asleep in his arms. Wuxia saw that she was so tired that she fell asleep. He didn't want to disturb her. He folded the quilt for her, kissed her forehead, and left the room. At this moment, it was already close to evening. When Wuxia walked out of the room, Lu Jinyu and Jianghu had already been waiting for him at the door for a long time. When they saw that he was fully dressed and looked energetic, the tacit understanding between the brothers made them immediately feel the subtle changes in his body at this moment. It seemed that boss and sister-in-law had returned to the room and must have had a good time. Chapter 1831. In his impression, Wuxia had always been an ascetic man. Little did he know that his boss was actually a man who was passionate on the inside. On the surface, he looked dull, but deep down, he was still very, ahem. It could only be understood, only understood. Jianghu put aside these random thoughts and walked up to him. He then whispered a few words into his ear. Upon hearing this, Wuxia nodded and pursed his thin lips slightly. There was a medical center in the castle that was set up for emergencies. When he was preparing for the engagement ceremony, he had considered the possibility of an emergency, so he specially deployed a medical team from the island. He did not expect it to come in handy. At this moment, Mu Linfeng was in a rather bad mood. When Wuxia arrived, Mu Shumin was lying on the bed with a pale and lifeless face. His face was unbearably swollen because of the blood clots, especially the corners of his eyes and mouth, which required several stitches. Although the wound would heal, it would inevitably leave a scar and there was a risk of disfigurement. It was said that Mu Shumin had a few broken ribs and his nose bridge was also broken. Gong Jie's subordinates were vicious and merciless. They did not hold back when they attacked, and it was obvious that they wanted to kill her. Wuxia had the ability to stop him, but he did not do so. Mu Shumin could not blame anyone for his current state. His mouth had offended someone he should not have, so who could he blame? When Mu Linfeng saw him, his heart was in a mess and he had nowhere to vent his anger. When he saw a certain man appear in front of him with a stern expression, Mu Linfeng felt that his dignity was being challenged. "You still have the cheek to come here?" Wuxia sneered and did not give her any face when he spoke. "I didn't want to come over, but today is my engagement. Who would want to come to the ward and bring bad luck upon themselves?" Mu Linfeng was so angry that he was at a loss for words. His face was extremely ashen, but after taking a deep breath, a cold smile appeared on his face. "Haha. Good, very good. You little rascal, why didn't I realize that you were so capable before?" Today, he and Mu Shumin had rushed over with the intention of watching a joke. Initially, when he heard that Wuxia wanted to hold an engagement ceremony on the island, he thought it was ridiculous. Hence, his attitude was extremely contemptuous. It seemed that this brat really wanted to rebel. He actually stole the funds from the company's account and held this engagement without alerting the Mu group. It looked like he had turned a deaf ear to his words. Under Mu Linfeng's orders, Mu Shumin even went to check the financial group's account, but in the end, she made a huge blunder. Mu Yaxia had never used any funds in the Mu group's accounts. Most of the funds were from the financial groups. It was surprising that Mu Yaxia did not use a single cent from the family's accounts for such a big matter. Initially, when he said that he wanted to marry Yun Shishir, Mu Linfeng was furious and said that if he had the ability to get married, he should not use a single cent of the Mu family's capital. Mu Yaxia agreed immediately, but on the surface, he seemed to be dismissive. Mu Linfeng thought that he was just boasting. Did he think that he could hold a grand wedding on his own after leaving the Mu group? Chapter 1832. Thus, Mu Linfeng did not think too much about it at the time. He only thought that his young and hot-blooded nephew was just being impulsive. At most, he would only be fierce with his words and talk on paper. How would he have the capital to hold such a grand wedding if he did not use the company's account? However, when they rushed over to take a look, Mu Linfeng and Mu Shumin were so angry that they almost vomited blood. Without using the Mu family's capital, this engagement was not only held in a dignified manner, but it was also grand and sensational. How did his nephew do it? How did he manage to arrange such a grand event and even invite so many important guests? How did he manage to make an engagement ceremony that was even grander than the formal weddings of some of the rich and powerful families? How did he manage to do it? Mu Linfeng couldn't help but feel suspicious. Without using the company's account, how did he manage to make the ceremony so luxurious and dignified? Mu Linfeng was suspicious at once. In fact, although he was old and no longer as spirited and vigorous as when he was young, it didn't mean that he was stupid. All these years, be it Mu Yaxia nurtured his power outside or set up his own businesses, even if he kept the Mu family under wraps and didn't leak any clues, it didn't mean that Mu Linfeng wasn't vigilant at all. He already had his suspicions long ago. Even if Mu Yaxia's businesses couldn't compete with the Mu group's power for the time being, with his ability and capability, he was still young and capable. With his plans for himself, it wouldn't be long before he replaced the Mu group in a few years' time. Moreover, in recent years, his backbone had gradually shifted toward his private businesses. He even grafted many resources that originally belonged to the Mu group to the businesses under his name. He vaguely realized that this fellow had some selfish motives. However, he couldn't find any evidence. Moreover, he was preoccupied with handling the Mu family's affairs and didn't have the energy to keep up. He thought that as long as this fellow didn't go overboard, he could pretend that he didn't know. Moreover, he didn't find anything fishy. One thing he was certain of was that, in this aspect, Mu Yaxia had handled it flawlessly and had managed to hide it from his discerning eyes. Thus, Mu Linfeng only had suspicions and didn't have any concrete evidence. However, today's engagement banquet once again aroused his suspicions. He had originally come with the intention of watching a joke, but in the end, he was ruthlessly slapped by Mu Yaxia. Mu Linfeng only felt his old face burning from the slap, which was extremely embarrassing. Mu Yaxia's engagement banquet today was truly an honor for his family. He had never seen anyone's engagement banquet on such a scale. Even in the world, only the world-shocking British royal wedding of the century could compare. However, it was not easy to compare a wedding and an engagement. Perhaps, this kid's wedding in the future would be even more sensational than this engagement banquet. It might even attract the attention of the world. With his temperament, he would probably do so. Mu Linfeng, on the other hand, was perplexed. He did not know where the young man got his strength from to be able to do this. Chapter 1833. Could it be that this brat had gone to the extent of borrowing money to support this event? Judging by the looks of it, this engagement banquet could not have been held without spending tens of millions of yuan. Could it be that he had owed tens of millions of yuan just to fulfill a promise and for this woman? However, he was not in the mood to care about this at the moment. The biggest surprise at this engagement banquet was that mysterious man. Mu Shumin was ruthlessly taught a lesson at the engagement banquet. However, Mu Linfeng knew that this had nothing to do with anyone else. It was purely Mu Shumin's own cheap mouth. Mu Linfeng admitted that he had always felt that Mu Shumin was not a calm person. She did things in a high-profile manner, especially when she spoke fiercely and aggressively. It was easy for her to cause trouble from her mouth. Maybe it was because she had always been the core member of the Mu clan, so she was used to looking down on others. After all, the Mu clan had a prominent position in the capital. It could be said that the Mu clan was a prestigious clan that could cover the sky with one hand. Which clan had the ability to compete with the Mu clan? However, one had to remember that there was always someone better out there. It was not that there was no one who was more powerful than her. Today, he had really been slapped in the face. While Mu Linfeng was furious, he also felt that he had been utterly humiliated by Mu Shumin. However, that brat was a little too arrogant. His words of flattening the Mu family overnight still left a lingering fear in his heart. What kind of monstrous power did this brat have to be able to say such words? Mu Linfeng was attentive and heard that sentence. I want her life. She bullied my sister and deserved to die. Otherwise, do you think that the Gong family can be bullied by any Tom, Dick, or Harry? Mu family? Who do you think you are? Do you think that the Mu family can do whatever you want and bully others? I'd like to see if the Mu family or the Gong family is more capable. The Gong family. Mu Linfeng was stunned at that moment. He could tell that this young man's features were similar to Yun Shishir's and that they were related by blood. The two of them were probably siblings and had a close relationship. However, this man's self-introduction and provocation of the Mu family's reputation left him in a state of shock. The Gong family. Mu Linfeng knew of such a family. The Gong family of North America was a huge Chinese family that controlled a world-renowned arms group. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the Gong family's power was more impressive than the Mu family's. The Mu group was powerful because it had the support of Juanfang. It had been established for 100 years, and its roots were deeply rooted. However, the Mu family's power and influence. The Gong family was a huge family that controlled the war situation of the entire world. No matter who was involved in the Gong family's internal affairs, they would not take the Mu group seriously. However, this brat's of course. Could it be the Gong family that had a thunderous reputation? That meant, Yun Shishir is related to the Gong family? Mu Linfeng's as if they offended the Gong family, it might not be a good thing for Mu group. Who is that man? Mu Linfeng questioned him. Who are you talking about? The man who gave the order to beat Xu Min into such a miserable state. Who else could I be talking about? Chapter 1834. Mu Yaja smirked. As you can see, that man has a powerful background. Auntie has offended him. Not only did she suffer today, but her life may also be in danger in the future. I can only hope that he doesn't take this matter to heart. Given that rascal's character, he'll bear grudges against anyone who touches his sister. Mu Linfeng's heart skipped a beat. Even he said so. It seemed that the man's identity was as he had guessed. It seemed that he was indeed from the Gong family. It seemed that the feud between the Gongs and the Mus was unavoidable. At the thought of this, Mu Linfeng suddenly felt a little resentful. This Mu Shumin was always stirring up trouble for him. Usually, he could ignore those small fries, but this time, she had offended a big shot. How could he not be angry? Now that Mu Shumin was still unconscious in bed, she did not know how big of a mess she had gotten into. In the end, would he not have to take responsibility for it? However, did Mu Linfeng not think about it? Could he really do it? What puzzled him the most was when did Yun Shishir get in touch with the Gongs? Was she not the Yun family's adopted daughter? Could it be, was she an illegitimate daughter of the Gongs? This was not impossible. Mu Linfeng was no stranger to the Gong family. Speaking of which, the Gong and Mu families had some history with each other. The head of the Gongs, Gong Xiaoying, had some personal grudges with the Mus. Mu Linfeng also had some inkling of the past between Gong Xiaoying and Mu Sheng. Hence, the Gongs were an extremely fearsome existence to the Mus. Could it be that Yun Shishir was Mu Wanru and Gong Xiaoying's daughter? At this thought, he felt even more restless. Mu Yaja glanced at Mu Shumin and expressionlessly said, when she wakes up, second uncle, take her away from here. Don't let her spoil our mood. His words were a little hurtful. The corners of Mu Linfeng's lips twitched violently. He looked at him sharply like an eagle and sneered. Are you chasing us away? It's not that chasing is so unpleasant to hear. It's just that it's a little inappropriate for you guys to appear here. Now that the gongs are here, second uncle, don't tell me you want to make a big scene. You. Mu Linfeng slammed the table and stood up, pointing at him and scolding. You be ****. Which side are you on exactly? No matter what, she's still your aunt. It's fine if you don't care when she's being bullied right under your nose. But now that she's injured, not only do you not care, you even chase us away. Is this appropriate? I'm not on anyone's side. He only stood by his lady. Whoever bullied his wife's wife was his enemy. On the contrary, he was happy to see Gong Jia make a move on Mu Shumin. Given his status, it was indeed inappropriate for him to attack Mu Shumin. Gong Jia was different, though. Mu Yaja sneered. Even if he doesn't do anything, I won't sit back and do nothing. Aunt has gone overboard today. Since she spoke too fast, she should pay the price, shouldn't she? Mu Linfeng was speechless. Chapter 1835. Second uncle, you're being too courteous. However, you don't have to give me any face. You just have to think of a way to protect yourself. When the time comes, it'll be fine as long as you don't drag me down. Mu Yaja left after saying that. He had only come over to check if Mu Shumin was still breathing. He had thought that Mu Shumin would be on the verge of death after Gong Jia's men had hit her so hard. However, he did not expect her to be so tough. In that case, there was no need for him to stay any longer. It wasn't that he was cold and heartless. He was indifferent to everyone in the Mu family. Whether they lived or died, it had nothing to do with him. Being able to make the scene look presentable was already the greatest dignity he had left for the Mu family. Mu Linfeng watched Mu Yaja leave. Looking at his cold and threatening back, he suddenly felt that he could not keep this chess piece around. In the past, he had thought that he could still keep this rascal around if he could make him repent and cut ties with Yun Shishir. After all, in the entire Mu family, Mu Yaja's talent and ability were unparalleled. His position was also unshakable. Mu Linfeng had originally wanted to hand the Mu group over to him so that he could achieve more glory and create a bigger empire. Mu Linfeng's original plan was to make use of him to expand his territory and expand the Mu group's territory. Mu Linfeng's original plan had been well thought out. However, Mu Yaja's attitude now made him bitterly disappointed. The chess piece that he had painstakingly nurtured now had his own thoughts and opinions. Most importantly, as he continued to become more powerful, he gradually began to go against his ideals. This was not something that Mu Linfeng wanted to see. Mu Linfeng was worried that if this continued, the Mu group would fall into Mu Yaja's hands. If this rascal had selfish motives and started to transfer the Mu group's resources to his own businesses, then the Mu group would be emptied sooner or later. He might do that. He could see that the rascal was very ambitious. It might not be a good thing for the Mu group to fall into his hands. The Mu empire that he had worked so hard for so many years might end up in someone else's pocket. The foundation that he had worked so hard for would end up in someone else's pocket in the end. In the end, it would all be for naught. Wouldn't that be a joke? No one knew a son better than his father. Although Mu Yaja was not his biological son, he had nurtured him for so long that he had some understanding of his character and methods. Thus, Mu Linfeng had no choice but to consider grooming the next successor. After much thought, he could not come up with a name list. Although the Mu group was huge and had plenty of talented people, no matter how capable they were, they could not be compared to Mu Yaja and could not be mentioned in the same breath. Most of them were just jesters, and only a few of them were clear-headed. However, compared to Mu Yaja's business talent, they were still barely passable. Mu Linfeng had once predicted that there would not be a second person as brilliant as Mu Yaja in the Mu family within 100 years. Mu Linfeng was heartbroken at the thought of the person he had painstakingly nurtured going against him. He wanted to vomit blood, but he could not voice his bitterness. However, there was no other choice now. Mu Linfeng could only leave with Mu Shumin dejectedly. Chapter 1836. Along the way, Lu Jinyu could not help but shudder at the thought of how Mu Yaja had argued with Mu Linfeng earlier. "Chief, aren't you afraid that the old man will make things difficult for you if you keep arguing with him?" Lu Jinyu said half-jokingly. "That old man is probably worried that you're here to usurp the throne. He's probably going to start looking for ways to cultivate his power again. When that happens, the situation will be disadvantageous to you." Mu Yaja looked at him calmly and nonchalantly. "Are you kidding me?" Lu Jinyu was stunned. Mu Yaja said coldly, "Do I still need to be afraid of him now?" "But, no buts." Mu Yaja interrupted him without allowing him to object. "I've already endured to the limit for today. Now that I've made my stand clear, that old man is just a salted fish struggling on his deathbed even if he wants to salvage something. After using me for so long, now that I've made my stand clear, he'll definitely find a way out for himself. Unfortunately, it's too late for that now." He had long realized that Mu Linfeng's so-called treating him as his own was, in fact, for his own benefit. The so-called thinking for his sake and wanting to protect his position in the Mu group was just too nice to hear. In the end, it was just for his own benefit and to protect his empire. Mu Xing was still around, so he had no choice but to restrain himself in order to preserve the family's reputation. However, once Mu Xing's last breath was gone, he would definitely make a move. All this while, Mu Linfeng had indeed treated him as his own and nurtured him wholeheartedly. However, the so-called nurturing was nothing more than using him to strengthen the Mu group before kicking him out of the door and enjoying the fruits of his labor. There was no such thing in this world, though. He had been used for so long, it was time for him to retaliate. This war had just begun. "Chief, don't worry. With us brothers around, we'll definitely serve you until the end," Lu Jinyu said with a smile. Mu Yaja's lips curled up, but his eyes were sharp as he revealed a confident smile. At night, there was going to be a bonfire dance party by the beach. The venue had already been set up. Thousands of tons of fireworks had been flown by air and were now arranged in the venue. These fireworks were all custom-made. Mu Yaja had put in a lot of effort. Yun Shishir changed into a gown and held Mu Yaja's hand. When they arrived at the venue, Yu Yu and Gong Jia were fiddling with delicate fireworks. "Uncle, I heard that when this firework is released, it will turn into a heart-shaped firework in the air," Yu Yu said in surprise. Gong Jia, on the other hand, had rarely come into contact with such things. Even though his career had always involved him dealing with gunpowder, he had never personally given up on fireworks. Hence, at this moment, he was fiddling with them like a curious child. "Are you setting off fireworks?" Gong Jia shook his head. "Nope. Then I'll release the explosives." Yun Shishir stood at the side. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she watched the comical conversation between her uncle and nephew. She was about to step forward when she heard someone calling her from behind. "Shishir." Yun Shishir turned around and saw Xiao Shui and Jiang Li. Chapter 1837. "You flatter me." Yun Shishir smiled and held her hand. Sizing her up, she pursed her lips and smiled. "You don't look bad in this outfit, either. I heard that there's going to be a bonfire party at your engagement party, so I pestered my husband to buy this outfit for me. It's Chanel's new winter collection, and it costs a few thousand yuan." My husband's heart ached when he saw it. Jiang Li smiled shyly, but she felt quite happy when Yun Shishir praised her. Yun Shishir said, "Your husband dotes on you a lot." "What?" "I was the one who pestered him to buy it. He usually doesn't spend more than this when he buys me clothes." Jiang Li exaggeratedly raised a finger and sighed helplessly. "It's rare for him to spend so much money, so I really envy you a lot. There are times when I really envy you. Look, why are you so lucky to be able to meet such a good man who pampers you like a little princess?" As she spoke, she glanced at Mu Yaja with a blushing face. For some reason, she did not dare to look straight at this man who was as handsome as a god. Mu Yaja laughed. "I only have one wife. If I don't pamper her like a princess, what if she runs away in anger? His humor made Jiangli laugh heartily. At the same time, she was even more envious of Yun Shishir's good fortune. However, this envy was different from the jealousy of Yun Qinli and Yun Qingmiao. She, too, was sincerely wishing them well. Hence, she praised, "Your husband is very handsome today, too. The two of you look really compatible standing together." Mu Yaja smiled gracefully. "Thank you." Jiangli had a good impression of him due to his decent behavior. Compared to her slovenly husband, it was really infuriating to compare oneself to others. Xiao Shui, who was standing at the side, said, "Shishir, Jiangli has been infatuated with your husband today. You don't know this, but during the ceremony at noon, she couldn't take her eyes off your man. That saliva of hers, tsk. Yun Shishir chuckled. "Really?" Jiangli panicked and grabbed Xiao Shui's hand. "Hey! Don't mess with me. Since when did I drool?" If Shishir hears this, she might misunderstand. All right. I'm just joking. Our Shishir knows my character. She won't take it seriously." Xiao Shui looked at Yun Shishir and asked, "Am I right, Shishir?" "All right. You're the worst." Jiangli gets shy easily. "Don't tease her anymore." Yun Shishir asked, "Why didn't you bring the child with you?" When Jiangli heard this, she frowned and said, "I'm so angry just thinking about it. The child is so disappointing. I wanted to bring him over, but that guy kept wanting to play with Yu. But who would have thought that he would have a fever right before he set off? Recently, the temperature has been very low. Her fever is at 38 degrees Celsius. I have no choice but to leave her in the care of my mother-in-law. I can only do it myself. It's all right. When he recovers, he can play with Yu. There will be a chance in the future." Jiangli smiled and said a little embarrassedly, "That little guy seems to like Yu. He kept telling me that Yu is pretty, smart, and knows how to take care of people. He even said that he wants to marry Yu when he grows up. This child is so mischievous. He's so young, but he's already in love." Yu listened from the side, but he looked up helplessly. He didn't want to get married. Chapter 1838. Xiao Yichen was squatting on the ground, playing with 2 firework sticks in his hands. When he heard the adults teasing each other, he could not help but perk up his ears to listen. Jiangli looked at Yu and Xiao Yichen with envy in her heart. Shishir was really lucky. She had a husband who doted on her power, and 2 cute little fellows who were as obedient and sensible as elves. She was really a winner in life. She was very envious, but there were some people and some things that could not be envied. Yun Shishir smiled as she listened. She could tell that Jiang Lixing's cute little girl liked Yu very much. She could tell from the time they were together at the Fairy Tale Valley amusement park. This little girl was always following Yu and calling him Big Brother. She was chattering non-stop and would not stop pestering him. Actually, she was more reliant on Yu. Although Yu was only 7 years old, he was more mature and sensible than many teenagers. He knew how to take care of people and gave people a very reliable feeling. When Yu was very young, she paid attention to the child's upbringing. Hence, under her training, Yu was very sensible, especially towards girls and young children. He was very gentlemanly and knew how to give in to others. The children all liked him. Among the children, he was especially famous as the king of the children. Hence, she smiled and said, "He's a child. He's so young, so how would he know about love? He doesn't even know what marriage means." In the children's world, love is a very pure thing without any impurities. Although our Yu is 7 years old, he's always very sensible and considerate. He's very gentlemanly to girls, so many girls like to play with him. However, this child doesn't seem to like playing with other children. He's been very clingy and dependent on me since he was young. That's because mommy is the person I love the most. Of course, I want to stick to mommy. Yu said self-righteously. When Xiao Yichen saw this, he immediately puffed out his chest and expressed his attitude. I love mommy too. Jianghu was amused by the two children's innocent words. She looked at Xianxia enviously and said, Xianxia, I'm so envious of you. These two children are really too cute. Why don't I exchange with you and let you be my son and Xian be your daughter? Before Xianxia, as if he was facing a great enemy. He pouted and said pitifully, I don't want that. I only mommy. Xianxia. It was obviously a joke to tease the child, but this child actually took it seriously. Jianghu, on the other hand, felt awkward when she heard this. Her lips twitched as she forced a smile. Squatting down, she reached out to hug Yu in disappointment and deliberately tried to curry favor with him. Yu, can you be Auntie's godson? Yu, on the other hand, hugged his mother's waist tightly, unwilling to be hugged by her no matter what. Jianghu was both embarrassed and amused. She looked up at Xianxia and teased, You're such a clingy child. He doesn't even want me to hug him. Mommy. Chapter 1839. Xianxia was amused by him. Because she was wearing a gown, she couldn't squat down and carry him. She could only lean over and pat his little head gently. She comforted him and said, Yu, Auntie is just joking with you. How could mommy bear to abandon you? You're mommy's baby. You're mommy's favorite little sweetheart. Mommy can't bear to abandon you. Okay. Yu nodded and stuck out his tongue mischievously. He was so cute. Xiao Yichen ridiculed him from the side. It was obvious that this guy was saying sweet nothings on purpose to win mommy's favor. Jianghu pretended to be aggrieved and tugged at his sleeve. Yu, don't take it seriously. Auntie is just joking with you. Yu, don't be angry. Auntie is teasing you because she likes you. All right. Yu, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Yu thought to himself, I'm not angry, but can you not tug at my sleeve? I don't like you. In his heart, Jianghu was already on par with the child abductor auntie. Children didn't like such jokes from adults. What child exchange? He didn't want that. He only had one mommy. No one could take her away from him. Jianghu looked at Yu and said enviously, Aya, Xianxia, you're so lucky. Look at your son. He's so obedient. That daughter of mine, let alone being easily coaxed, even a lollipop would foolishly run away with someone else. You can't lose your son. Look, he's so clingy to you. No one can coax him away. Yu sticks to me the most. In the past, there were colleagues who joked about this. At that time, Yu was still young. She was so scared that she threw herself into my arms and cried loudly. Many people tried to comfort her in a flurry, but they managed to. Xianxia recalled that when Yu was 4 years old, one of her colleagues saw how cute Yu was and wanted to carry him home to play with. Hence, she deliberately lied to Yu that she wanted to bring him home to be her son. Yu was so scared that she broke down and cried. In the end, her eyes were red and swollen. She was extremely sad. Jianghu continued, Then, Yu, are you willing to be my son-in-law? Son-in-law? Yu pretended not to understand. She widened her eyes in confusion, but the image of Xianxian's unreasonable behavior appeared in her mind. She was speechless. That's right. In the future, you'll be my son-in-law and marry Xianxian. Are you willing? Jianghu teased him. Yu immediately shook his head like a rattle drum. He did not want that. That Xianxian was unreasonable and arrogant. He did not want such an uncute wife. Jianghu's expression became awkward. She could not get out of this embarrassing situation in front of everyone. She felt that her daughter was being despised by Yu. She forced a smile and asked, Why not? Because I want to stay by mommy's side for the rest of my life. I don't want to get married. A naive and childish remark cleverly dispelled the awkward atmosphere and made the guests burst into laughter. It had to be said that Yu's IQ was extremely high. His EQ was also much higher than many adults. He knew how to save face for others. When he saw that Jianghu was embarrassed, he deliberately said such childish words to tell her that he was not willing because he wanted to stay by mommy's side for the rest of his life. Jianghu was laughing in her heart, but her face was full of joy. This child is really smart. Haha. This little fellow. Chapter 1840. Even though she felt that it might not be a good thing for her child to stay by her side for the rest of his life. The child would eventually grow up. Even though she had raised him painstakingly, she still wished him well and hoped that there would be a considerate girl by his side. Even though she could not bear to part with Yu, she would not tie him down for the rest of his life. It was said that when a child grew up and a girl was about to get married, a father would feel as if a knife was being twisted in his heart, as if he had fallen out of love. Similarly, when a boy was about to get married, a mother would feel as if she was facing a great enemy. However, when the time came, she would still hope that her son would be happy. Our Xianxian likes you a lot. She has always said that she wants to marry you when she grows up. Jianghu continued to encourage him. Yu, it's good that you marry our Xianxian. Think about it, you will definitely get married in the future. Even though you said that you want to stay by your mommy's side for the rest of your life, boys will eventually have to start their own families and careers when they grow up. Even if you say that you don't want her now, who knows, when a girl beckons you with her finger when you grow up, you might not want your mommy anymore. When that time comes, you will also have a wife. How will you still care about your mommy? However, Yu said mischievously, no, I won't. Mommy is my precious baby. How can I not want my mommy? The first criterion for me to marry a wife is to be filial to my mommy. Otherwise, I won't want her no matter how pretty she is. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect such a young child to be so filial. He's not simple. Yes. Most of the children nowadays are very willful. Yu is so sensible. It seems that Xianxia has taught him well. Xiao Yichen added, I don't want to get married in the future either. I just want to stay by mommy's side until we grow old. When mommy is old, I want to hold her hand and take care of her. Jianghu was so jealous when she heard this. She thought about her spoiled daughter. She was so arrogant and willful. Not only was she immature, but she would also say things like, Mommy is so mean. Mommy doesn't dote on Xianxian at all. Xianxian doesn't want mommy anymore. Compared to Yu's willful words, she was so envious that her eyes almost turned red. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little resentful and said, Sure. Let me pinch you. You're so lucky. If I had two such sensible and obedient sons, I would wake up laughing even in my dreams. That daughter of mine only knows how to make me angry, but she's not sensible at all. Sigh, everyone says that girls are more sensible than boys, but now, this notion has really been shattered. Xiao Shui chimed in from the side, Sure is very lucky. Look, she has such cute Xiao Bao and such a handsome husband. I can't be envious. Jianghu joked, Sure, don't you know how lucky you are? I must cherish the happiness I have now. A man as handsome as your husband who knows how to take care of you and dote on you is rare nowadays. You have to work harder to tie his heart down. If you don't keep a close eye on him, such a handsome husband will be taken away by another woman. You'll cry yourself to death. As soon as she finished speaking, the room fell into an awkward silence. It had to be said that Jianghu's words were truly inappropriate. Chapter 1841. This person had just gotten engaged, yet she said such a thing. What did she mean by, don't let other women lead you away? How could she make such an inappropriate joke in such an occasion? Jianghu was not very knowledgeable. She usually stayed at home to take care of the children, and the people she interacted with were mostly young mothers. As a result, she lacked social skills. Hence, her low EQ was vividly reflected in this sentence. These words made Xianxia feel rather awkward. Even though she knew that Jianghu did not have any ill intentions, and the subjective meaning of her words was to express her envy of her good fortune, it still made others feel uncomfortable. Xiao Shui also felt awkward. She did not expect Jiang Li to make such a joke. Hence, she tugged at Jiang Li's sleeve awkwardly. Jiang Li belatedly realized that her words were somewhat inappropriate in such a situation. Thus, she also felt embarrassed. Wuxia smiled elegantly and suddenly said, "My wife is very good." Everyone was stunned and looked at him. However, as he smiled, he lowered his gaze and gazed tenderly at Yun Shishir's side profile. The tenderness in his eyes seemed to be able to squeeze water out of them. Even though he hadn't said anything, everyone in the room was caught off guard and fed a mouthful of dog food. Although the words, "my wife is very good," did not have any flowery words, the adoration in them was obvious. Wuxia said casually, "With my wife around, no other woman can enter my eyes." His eyes were filled with her. His heart was filled with her. Who else could there be in his heart? Wuxia was not joking when he said this. It was from the bottom of his heart. Jiang Li was so envious that her eyes were sore. How romantic. Thinking about her husband, who was like a block of wood, when had he ever said such gentle and romantic words to her? Not to mention, "I love you," even when they quarreled, he had never coaxed her or compromised. Jiang Li suddenly stopped talking. At this moment, she felt aggrieved. Perhaps it was because other people's happiness was too dazzling that she felt envious and jealous. Yun Shishir smiled when she heard this. She turned her head and gazed at him gently. Then, she curved her lips and whispered in a voice that only he could hear, "My husband is also very good. You know what? I've never envied anyone when I'm with you." Perhaps, there was nothing more blissful than this. She had never envied anyone else for being able to hold his hand and be with him. Therefore, she felt that she was the happiest woman in the world to have him. Yun Yecheng, who was standing at the side, was so touched that his eyes were about to tear up. He rubbed his eyes with his handkerchief, but he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. Perhaps, before today, he still had some doubts about this man's feelings. Did this man really love his daughter? Was he really sincere to his daughter? Could his daughter really be happy with him? There were so many question marks that he couldn't sleep well on the night before the engagement banquet. However, when he heard Wuxia's words, his heart immediately calmed down. Chapter 1842. His greatest wish was for his daughter to be happy. Now that he had fulfilled one of his wishes, he felt a sense of relief. Yun Yeho was also very emotional. He held his brother's hand and said happily, "Brother, you're so lucky. You can rest assured that Shishir has met such a good man." "Yes." Yun Yecheng was still touched. Looking at Yun Shishir, he vaguely recalled the first time they met. When she was 9 years old, he saw her for the first time in the welfare home. At that time, she was skinny and tattered from head to toe. He could tell that her clothes were old and dirty. In the dormitory, she was huddled alone in a corner, hugging her knees helplessly. She looked around vigilantly at her surroundings with a blank and frightened gaze. When she saw him, she shrank into an even smaller ball in fear. She was like an injured animal, isolated and helpless. At that time, that pair of hurt and tired eyes touched him all of a sudden. Because of that fragile gaze, he felt a stab in his heart. At that moment, he decided to adopt this child without hesitation. Even if Li Qin protested, he did not care at all. When he brought her home, he doted on and protected her, treating her as if she was his own. Gradually, a father-daughter relationship developed between them. Even though there was no blood bond between them, he had never treated her as an outsider. She relied on him. He also doted on her like his own daughter. Humans were soft-hearted. Yun Na was insensible and disobedient, always making him angry and furious. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, cherished this hard-won kinship very much. When Yun Shishir was young, she adopted a stray dog, although it was later thrown away by Li Qin. This dog was very playful and adorable. Yun Shishir brought it home because she pitied it when she saw the children bullying it. Perhaps it was because it had been homeless since it was young, but after it was adopted, it was very obedient and never caused any trouble. Perhaps it was because it had been homeless and lonely for too long that it cherished this warmth more than its own life. Yun Shishir must be the same. It was precisely because she had been homeless and helpless when she was young that she wanted to work hard to protect her family when she had a home. He had never had it before, so he treasured it even more. Now, she had grown up and was standing beside another man. Her eyes were filled with happiness and her smile was like a flower. Yun Yecheng, on the other hand, felt as if a lifetime had passed. She finally had a home of her own. He was happy for her. His beloved daughter had finally met the most important man in her life. Gong Jia stood silently by the side without any expression on his face. But when he saw the happy smile on Yun Shishir's face, his heart was touched. At the banquet, guests kept coming up to them to offer their heartfelt blessings. Especially when the royal ministers, princes, princesses, and the country's president kissed her and gave her their blessings, Yun Shishir was flattered. She disappointingly thought that she had only seen these big shots on TV. She did not expect to receive their blessings today. She silently thought to herself, can I ask them for their autographs? If Yu knew what she was thinking, he would definitely hate her for failing to live up to his expectations. Just as everyone finished giving their blessings, Gong Jia suddenly walked towards her. Chapter 1843. What beautiful fireworks! Yun Shishir held his arm and leaned on his shoulder. Did you prepare all of this? He asked her, do you like it? I like it. I like it so much. I really like it. Yun Shishir was touched. Thank you. Wuxia. He caught on to her faulty wording and raised his eyebrows in dissatisfaction. What should you call me? Her face was a little red. She pursed her lips and said embarrassedly, isn't it inappropriate to call you husband now? If you can't call me that now, how long are you going to wait? Are you going to wait until my hair turns white? Until you call me hubby? Wuxia said half jokingly, half seriously, the engagement party is already held. Are you still thinking of running away from the marriage? Yun Shishir pushed his shoulders shyly and said unhappily, no. You know that's not what I meant. Then what should you call me? Wuxia patiently guided her. Yun Shishir pouted and then secretly looked at his meaningful expression. Suddenly, she plucked up her courage and called, hubby. Good girl. My wife. He hugged her and kissed her amidst the fireworks and under everyone's stunned gazes. A bunch of fireworks slowly rose in the night sky and bloomed in the night sky. The romantic scene was frozen at this moment. It was nighttime. Wuxia was still entertaining the guests at the cocktail party. She returned to her room early and changed into her pajamas. Just as she was about to go to the bathroom to wash off her heavy makeup, her phone rang at the wrong time. She walked to the sofa in a light mood and hummed a song. She took out her phone from her bag and glanced at the screen. However, when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped a beat. Yun Shishir could not help but feel suffocated. The words, Gu Xingza, continued to jump along with the ringtone. She actually felt inexplicably flustered. She glanced at the door before picking up the phone. Her heartbeat instantly sped up. Hello? Xingza. Shishir, where are you? On the other end, Gu Xingza's heavy and tired voice suddenly rang out. I heard that you had something to do, so the roadshow that was originally scheduled for today was postponed. Gu Xingza added. Only then did Yun Shishir remember that the production team of The Green Apple had entered the promotional period and had started to hold a nationwide roadshow. The premiere was originally scheduled for today, but because she had applied for leave, Lin Fengtian had to postpone it for a few days. Initially, she was quite embarrassed. Because of her personal matters, she had affected the entire crew's schedule. She felt extremely guilty. However, Lin Fengtian had said that she was the female lead and that anyone could be absent except for her. Therefore, he did not hesitate to postpone the premiere. She was both grateful and guilty. However, Lin Fengtian laughed and said, no matter how important it is not as important as your life. It's fine. Hence, when she received the superstar's call, the first thing she felt was immense guilt. Yes, on the other end, Gu Xingzi said slowly in an eerily calm voice, I also heard that you are engaged. But you didn't invite me. Why? Gu Xingzi's slightly helpless voice made her heart beat even faster. He asked her why she did not invite him. Chapter 1844. It was because she was afraid. Afraid of his rejection. Afraid that Mu Yaja would be unhappy because of it. Yin Shishir remained silent, not knowing how to speak. On the other end, Gu Xingzi was silent for a while and said helplessly, I thought that I shouldn't be absent for such an important event. But I didn't receive your invitation. He suddenly took a deep breath and, as if he had used up all his energy, questioned her silently, Shishir, maybe I don't have the chance to work hard, but are you so stingy to give me the chance to give you my blessings? Are you so stingy to give me the chance to give you my blessings? His voice was filled with bitterness. Her mind went blank at that moment. I thought that you didn't want to come. I thought, you might not wish me well. Ha, he let out an indifferent laugh and said in a self-deprecating manner, I don't want to hear words that are too fake and insincere. You're too full of yourself. What do you mean by, you thought? Suddenly, he said again, if you're really happy, what reason do I have not to give you my blessings? If you're really happy, what reason do I have, not to give up on you? The last 4 words seemed to have escaped from the roots of his teeth as if he was gnashing his teeth. Yin Shishir was stunned. For a moment, her heart was in a mess and she didn't know how to respond to him. At least let me give up, right? At least let me see with my own eyes how happy you are before I can truly let go, right? Gu Xingzi suddenly broke down and said, at least give me a chance to give up, right? Yin Shishir bit her lower lip hard and continued to take deep breaths. The guilt in her heart was still gushing out like an overflowing flood. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Xingzi. Other than the words, I'm sorry, she didn't know what else to say. Gu Xingzi, on the other hand, was upset and inexplicably anxious. He raised his voice slightly and said unhappily, I didn't call to hear you say those words. Yin Shishir pursed her lips, not knowing what to say. On the other end, Gu Xingzi fell into a long silence. Finally, he took a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, listen, Shishir, I've let go. You should be satisfied. You don't have to be on guard against me anymore. I've let go. I won't love you anymore, and I won't pester you anymore, I'm calling to wish you a happy engagement. I don't have any other intentions, so you don't have to think too much. She smiled. Thank you, Xing. Before she could finish her sentence, the person on the other end hastily hung up the phone. Beep, 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 a series of busy tones made her brain completely tense up. Yin Shishir's face froze, but she didn't react for a long time. In the Chengqing apartment, Gu Xingzi fell onto the sofa. His grip loosened as if he had lost all his strength. His phone fell onto the floor. Bang! The phone fell onto the floor. A crack appeared on the screen and it broke. Initially, he hadn't called to wish her well. He actually wanted to ask her, why does it have to be Mu Yaja? Could it be that he couldn't do it? He could also give her happiness. But at the same time, he asked himself, why does it have to be Yin Shishir? Why couldn't it be other women? Chapter 1845. In the end, he even forgot what he wanted to say. He gave her a fake blessing and hurriedly hung up the phone. If he had listened to her voice for one more second, he would have broken down. Gu Xingzi raised his head and looked at the ceiling with a pair of hollow eyes. His gaze was numb, but it was as if he wanted to look through the ceiling. This was the first time he had fallen deeply in love with someone, but in the end, she had pushed him away. So this was what it felt like to be abandoned. Gu Xingzi clenched his fists unwillingly. His fingernails dug into his palms, but his senses seemed to be numb and he could not feel any pain. Or perhaps the pain in his heart was so excruciating that his senses seemed to be numb and he could not feel any pain at all. In the end, he had lost, even the chance to work hard. Qin Zhou knocked on the door for a long time, but there was no response. He took out his keys and opened the door. When he entered, he saw that the living room was dark. He turned on the lights and saw Gu Xingzi sitting on the sofa. He was expressionless and looked at the ceiling indifferently. His cell phone had fallen to the side and the screen was broken. He immediately walked up to him. "What's wrong?" Gu Xingzi did not speak. Qin Zhou frowned. He had no idea what had happened. He frowned and teased him half-jokingly. "Why do you look like your soul has left your body?" "What happened?" "Nothing." Gu Xingzi was inexplicably irritable. He glared at him and said impatiently, "What could have happened to me?" As he spoke, he stood up from the sofa and stumbled toward the table. He had not been able to sleep properly for 2 days and 2 nights. Hence, he was in a daze. He supported himself on the table and held the cup with difficulty. His back view was inexplicably stiff and cold. Behind him, Qin Zhou was at a loss for a moment. Then, he pursed his lips and said awkwardly, "You seem to be in a bad mood today?" "Shut up." Gu Xingzi suddenly threw the cup on the floor and turned around angrily. "I told you to be quiet." Qin Zhou was rather shocked. This seemed to be the first time she had been so angry at him since they met. In the past, although Xingzi's personality was a little cold, even if he was in a bad mood, he would quietly close himself up from the beginning to the end. He would never throw such a big tantrum. Qin Zhou was completely dumbfounded by this furious roar. Just as he was about to lose his temper, he saw Gu Xingzi's body sway. He immediately went forward to support his arm. As soon as she got close to him, she smelled the strong scent of alcohol. "You drank?" Gu Xingzi impatiently pushed him aside and said coldly, "It's none of your business." "What do you mean it's none of my business? How can I not care about you when you look like this?" Qin Zhou did not give up and went forward to support his arm. Gu Xingzi seemed to have lost all his strength. His body tilted and he leaned weakly against Qin Zhou. Even though his entire body was weak, he still pushed him away regardless. "Let go of me. Leave me alone." Qin Zhou did not know whether to laugh or cry, as if he was coaxing a willful child. He said, "I want to let go of you, but now, you're clearly the one leaning on me." Gu Xingzi was about to speak when he suddenly coughed violently. Cough, cough, cough. Chapter 1846. At first, he thought that he was just coughing a few times, but in the end, it was getting out of hand and he was coughing as if he had overdrawn his energy. Qin Zhou's half-joking expression suddenly disappeared and he anxiously held him up. However, he realized that Gu Xingzi's originally fair face was now pale. "What's wrong with you?" Qin Zhou was extremely worried. From the looks of it, it seemed like his stomach was acting up. He had a very serious stomach problem and he rarely drank. It wasn't that he couldn't hold his liquor, but if he drank too much alcohol, his stomach problem would act up. The last time his stomach problem acted up, it was because he drank a few glasses of wine at a social event. At the hotel, Gu Xingzi had just opened the door when he fainted at the entrance. He was hurriedly sent to the hospital, where they found out that his stomach was bleeding. This time, his symptoms were exactly the same as the previous time. Qin Zhou couldn't help but wonder if he had drunk too much alcohol after not eating for 2 days and 2 nights. At the thought of this, Qin Zhou supported him and walked out of the door without any explanation. Gu Xingzi pushed him away and frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm taking you to the hospital. Looking at you, I'm worried that your stomach is acting up." "Get lost." Gu Xingzi pushed him away in frustration. "Why are you haunting me like a ghost? Did I ask you to control me?" "Xingzi, don't be willful. Your body is already like this and you're still drinking. Have you ever thought about your own health?" "I don't need to think. I just want to be quiet and don't let anyone disturb me. Whether it's you or anyone else, stay away from me." Gu Xingzi's eyes were filled with anxiety. After he finished speaking expressionlessly, his body swayed and he finally couldn't take it anymore. His vision turned black and he lost consciousness. On the other end, Yun Shishir stared at the phone screen with her mouth agape. Looking at the phone that had been hung up, she couldn't calm down for a long time. Suddenly, a devilish voice came from behind her. "What are you doing?" Xianxia jumped in shock. In her great shock, the phone slipped from her hand due to her nervousness and fell to the ground with a loud thud. Ah! She turned around abruptly, only to see Wuxia standing behind her without her knowing. Her eyes widened in shock, and due to an inexplicable fluster, her expression became a little unnaturally nervous. When did you come in?" Wuxia looked at her calmly. His deep eyes fell on her face, but he smiled. "Just now." "Just now?" "Yes." "Why didn't you knock before coming in?" When Wuxia heard this, he raised his head and elegantly looked around the room. He asked calmly, "This is our room. I don't think I need to knock on the door." There was panic in Xianxia's eyes. She patted her thundering chest, clearly frightened by his sudden appearance. She rebuked, "Why are you like a cat? You don't even make a sound when you walk. I didn't even notice you standing behind me. You were too engrossed in the phone call." Wuxia paused and looked at the phone that had fallen on the floor. His eyes flashed with suspicion. "Who were you calling?" "I didn't call anyone." Xianxia was a little flustered. She immediately bent down as if she had a guilty conscience and wanted to pick up the phone. Chapter 1847. She didn't know why, but when her phone fell into his hands, her heart started beating wildly uncontrollably. What about me?" Wuxia laughed. "Why are you stammering? It's as if you have a guilty conscience." Xianxia's heart skipped a beat as she looked at him in disbelief. Wuxia pretended to examine her expression seriously and suddenly asked in a deep voice, "You look so nervous. Are you doing something bad behind my back?" "No." Xianxia immediately snatched the phone from his hands and casually made up an excuse. "I just wanted to see if my phone was broken." As she said this, she seriously examined the screen to see if it was cracked. Wuxia looked at the phone and then at her before asking out of the blue, "Who's calling?" Wuxia frowned. "You can't tell me?" "No," Xianxia explained awkwardly, "it was Qin Zhou who called. He informed me of the upcoming schedule and asked me to prepare for the premiere of The Green Apple." Wuxia pursed his lips and stared at her. Suddenly, his lips curled up and he said, "Are you lying?" "No." Xianxia felt extremely guilty, but she still straightened her back and looked up at him. "What do you mean by lying?" "I'm just telling the truth." "All right, I'm just teasing you." Upon hearing this, Xianxia's face turned pale. The huge rock that had been hanging in her throat finally fell to the ground. She relaxed for a moment but was shocked to find that she was breaking out in cold sweat. Wuxia smiled gently as if he didn't notice anything strange about her. He immediately reminded her, "It's getting late. Hurry up and take a shower." "Oh," Xianxia nodded in a daze. At this moment, her mind was in a mess and she didn't know what she was thinking. Oh my God. Subconsciously, she actually lied. It was Gu Xingzi who had called and nothing had happened, but she was still afraid that he would be angry, so she subconsciously mentioned Qin Zhou and avoided Gu Xingzi. She still could not forget the confrontation between Wuxia and Gu Xingzi on set that day. She naturally wanted to avoid such a thing at all costs. But Wuxia was so smart. She didn't know when he came in or when he was standing behind her. She also didn't know how much of her phone call he had heard. She didn't know if he would see through her lies. If he saw through it, it would be counterproductive. There was clearly nothing going on, but he was afraid that he would misunderstand on a deeper level. Xianxia was confused. She wanted to tell him the truth, but in front of Wuxia, she didn't dare to mention the name Gu Xingzi. Now that he had relented and told her to take a shower, she felt as if she had been granted amnesty and walked towards the bathroom. However, she had just taken a step when Wuxia suddenly grabbed her waist from behind and pulled her into his embrace. Xianxia couldn't help but feel nervous and on tenterhooks. She was afraid that he would discover something and was planning to force a confession out of her. Chapter 1848. Don't dawdle. I'm waiting for you, he said in a gentle voice. Holding her waist, he took advantage of the situation and lingered on her chest. His slightly hoarse voice was bewitching. Don't make me wait for too long. Xianxia's heart stopped and her face instantly flushed red like steam. What are you talking about? Blushing, she pushed him away and headed to the bathroom with her head lowered. Perhaps she was too nervous, or perhaps she was so shy that she forgot herself, but when she entered the bathroom, she slammed her head against the door frame, causing her to grimace in pain. Wuxia's lips stiffened as he watched her holding her forehead in pain and plunging into the bathroom. When she closed the door, the smile on Wuxia's face froze in an instant. He slowly focused his gaze and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. After the engagement party ended, she spent 2 days with him on the island before hurrying back to the set. She was already deeply grateful that the production crew had given her a 7-day break. Hence, 2 days after the engagement party ended, she hurried back. For 2 consecutive days and nights, she filmed 2 daytime scenes and drove through the night. Xianxia gritted her teeth and put in all her effort to finish filming the scenes that she had been delayed for the past few days. As soon as she finished filming, she immediately applied for a leave of absence. Lin Fengtian had put her on the schedule for a whole week. Of course, Lin Fengtian specially went to the production crew of Lethal Beauty to inform Gu Xiaoyang. The two of them had a good relationship, so Lin Fengtian's one sentence was enough for Gu Xiaoyang to approve her leave. The Green Apple went through a long post-production process. In order to strive for perfection, Lin Fengtian delayed the post-production process for a long time. However, it was also because of this excellent post-production that it piqued the interest of the film's fans. On the internet, many netizens expressed their strong anticipation for this film. Before the premiere, there was a screening of the film with 100 people. Many fans of the original novel watched the screening and said that the film was great. The nationwide roadshow tour was about to begin. In order to promote the movie, Lin Fengtian was extremely spirited. He was prepared to win 24 roadshows nationwide in one go. In addition to the major provincial capitals, some prosperous second-tier cities were also on the list. He was full of confidence in this movie. He vowed that he would be the box office champion of the romance movie at Christmas and the end of the year. With this ambition, he was fully prepared. The early stage of publicity was almost explosive. Just the advance trailer alone had produced 5. Relying on his own rich resources, he bombarded the various satellite channels one after another. The theme song directly jumped to Inuit TV's #1. Many artists had recorded VCRs to congratulate Lin Fengtian on his success at the box office. It had to be said that although Lin Fengtian had the reputation of a devil director, and everyone on the set was afraid of him, it had to be said that his popularity was ridiculously good. Just by confirming the lineup of well-known directors and A-list celebrities that would